Kenneth, hand over the company to me. I won't run it as half-heartedly as you do. I was hit with this sudden declaration from Henry, my younger brother at the company I had inherited from our dad. He had always been more capable than me. But I had worked with my own sense of conviction. I had prioritized dialogue with the field and valued human connections, dedicating myself to the company. And now, to be called half-hearted. According to my calculations, if you keep running the company this way, it will definitely fall into the red within 3 years. This isn't some armchair theory, it's a forecast based on meticulous analysis. Look at reality. You've never beaten me, not in academics, sports, or work. What did you say? Before I knew it, I had grabbed him by the collar. The atmosphere in the conference room froze in an instant. Henry, with a faint smirk, turned to the board members and said, "Look, everyone. He's being emotional and resorting to violence. This is your current president." I slowly let go of him. The board members' disappointed gazes pierced my back. "Fine. I'll hand the company over to you. Dad, I'm sorry. As a president, as an older brother, I've completely lost. But this isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new story. How about working with us? I'll pay you triple what you're making now." That single remark would soon set the gears of fate in motion. The curtain was about to rise on an extraordinary tale involving my brother, myself, and the company. My name is Kenneth Yates. I work as the head of sales at Scott Trading Company, where my dad served as president. Scott Trading specializes in exporting Japan's top-tier electronic products to countries around the world. Our achievements in Asia are unparalleled, and the trust my father built during his youth remains an unshakable asset. Our clients range from major corporations to small and medium-sized enterprises, and we provide meticulous support. From product quality control to local sales strategies. The company has about 50 employees. While not a large organization, it's known for its expertise and attentive care. Among all the challenges at Scott Trading, my biggest concern was my brother Henry. Henry, like me, works as the executive director at Scott Trading. One day, a young staff member timidly approached his desk and said, "About the monthly report, Henry." In that moment, Henry's icy gaze pierced right through the junior colleague. "The deadline was yesterday, wasn't it?" "Yes, I'm sorry. It took longer than expected to verify the data. Everyone else submitted it on time. Only you didn't." Henry's tone carried a sharp edge. "This is critical information for the company. Delaying it impacts management decisions. Do you understand? I'm deeply sorry. It's just that the new format was..." "No excuses." Henry glared at the junior colleague with an icy stare. "If you can't do it, you're free to work elsewhere. This isn't a place for leniency." The colleague turned pale. The air around them grew colder. "Henry." I stood up and called out to him. Was that really necessary? It was. If we coddle employees like you do, the company won't move forward. Henry's words were sharp, like a blade. As if outright rejecting my entire management approach. Everyone needs time to adapt to new systems. We should guide them with care. Is this really the time to be so complacent? The Asian market changes every day. Those who can't adapt have no choice but to leave. At that moment, I noticed the junior colleague trembling slightly. I approached him and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay. Let's go through it together. The new system is challenging, but I know you can handle it." A faint glimmer of hope returned to the colleague's eyes. But Henry sneered coldly. "That's just like you, Kenneth. Encouraging incompetence under the guise of kindness." Henry stood up, leaving behind an icy glare, and disappeared into the meeting room. His retreating figure radiated a coldness that kept others at a distance. "I'm sorry about earlier. After the colleague had gone, I walked over to Henry's desk. Henry was silently working at his computer, engrossed in a complex financial analysis. On the screen was evidence of work that would take an ordinary employee days to complete, finished in just a few hours by Henry. "Impressive analysis," I said. Without a word, Henry turned his screen toward me. Displayed there was an intricate predictive model that combined economic indicators from various Asian countries with Scottrades performance data. It was the kind of work one would typically hire a specialized consultant to handle, yet Henry had done it all on his own. This exceptional ability was why Henry had been fast-tracked to the position of executive director. This will make it much easier to plan next quarter's strategy. Well done. Of course. Henry's voice remained as cold as ever. Yet, in the depths of his eyes, I thought I saw a hint of sorrow. Henry had always been a prodigy, excelling far beyond his peers since his school days. He graduated at the top of his class from the University of Tokyo, publishing multiple papers in economic journals while still a student. Offers to recruit him poured in from countless companies, even before his graduation. But ironically, his brilliance became the very thing that isolated him. Henry is incredible at his work, but he's hard to approach. It was a comment I occasionally heard within the company. Everyone acknowledged his capabilities, yet kept a distance. Henry's perfection left little room for others to relate to him. It had always been that way. In middle school, a math teacher once scolded him, saying, "Showing such a complex solution will only confuse your classmates." In high school, group study sessions left his peers frustrated. "Henry ends up doing everything, so there's nothing left for us." "Hey, Henry." I called out to him once more. He didn't take his eyes off the screen. "You're not wrong in how you think. But maybe try matching the pace of those around you a little more. You don't understand, Kenneth." Henry's voice wavered slightly. "This is normal for me. Everyone keeps telling me to adjust to others, but no one tells me how to do it. In the end, what they really want is for me to hide my abilities. Is that really the right thing to do?" His words were laden with years of loneliness and struggle. Perhaps he was right. Henry's exceptional talent had become a burden no one around him could truly understand. "Everyone says, 'You're amazing,' but deep down, they resent me. They think I'm arrogant or full of myself. That's why I..." Henry stopped mid-sentence. His fingers trembled slightly over the keyboard. I was certain he was carrying burdens I couldn't fully understand. Even now. On Henry's desk sat a small orange robot. I found myself staring at it absent-mindedly. When we were in elementary school, it was something I gave to Henry as a present. It was the first time Henry ever said, "I want this." It had been a Christmas gift I received, a toy robot from a hugely popular anime at the time. Henry was usually so quiet that for him to put his feelings into words, I knew it must have been something truly special. So, I immediately said, "Sure, take it." I still remember seeing how carefully Henry treated that toy and feeling genuinely glad I had given it to him. So, I gave Henry everything he wanted. In high school, it was my old fountain pen. In college, it was my desk. Just then, my desk phone rang, breaking me out of my thoughts. I picked it up. "Kenneth, Ms. Catherine from NR Electric is here to see you." I replied to the receptionist, "Please show her to the meeting room." NR Electric is one of the world's leading electronics manufacturers, producing everything from home appliances to industrial equipment. It is Scottrades' largest client and a key partner in expanding high-quality Japanese products to emerging markets, particularly in Asia. "Sorry to drop by while you're busy." I opened the meeting room door to find Catherine, my childhood friend, standing there. She was wearing a navy suit, her composed appearance radiating beauty. Things seemed to be going well at Scottrades. Catherine gave her usual slightly mischievous smile. "Yeah, thanks to my talented younger brother. Still getting along, I see. Don't mess with me. It's just too entertaining." I gave a wry smile at Catherine's teasing words. She had always been the one person who seemed to see right through me. All right, let's get to business. Here's the lineup of new products for this season. I looked through the materials Catherine handed me. We began discussing strategies for exporting home appliances, focusing particularly on the Southeast Asian market. We reviewed figures, analyzed markets, and negotiated prices. As always, we had a sincere and focused discussion. The meeting proceeded smoothly and was wrapped up in 30 minutes. Catherine, however, showed no signs of leaving. Instead, she leaned back into her chair. Hey, do you remember when you first joined Scott Trading? You spent your entire first year learning everything about the field, right? Yeah. I never imagined I'd start with packaging work back then. But wasn't that a good thing? Even now, the people in the field trust you, Kenneth. Catherine's words brought back a memory from last week. I shared the story with her. Yeah, just the other day, the warehouse supervisor told me we were wasting a lot of cardboard. By changing the packing method slightly, we managed to cut costs by 20%. Really? Was it that quiet guy? Yep. He used to think, no point telling the boss's son anything, but now they trust you completely. It's because you implement every suggestion you get, working hands-on to confirm it before making changes. Catherine's expression turned serious as she held her coffee cup. Every time I visit Scott Trading, I watch your employees' expressions. They're all so lively. That's such an important thing. You don't act arrogant just because you're the president's son. You listen to the people in the field and turn their ideas into reality. That makes them feel comfortable sharing their opinions. It's a rare and valuable skill. Do you really think so? I do. That's why NR Electric sees Scott Trading as our most trusted partner. Just then, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and gave me an apologetic look. Sorry, I've just been called into an emergency meeting. I need to head back. It's fine. Let's catch up another time. Sure, next time, let's have a longer chat. I walked Catherine to the entrance. As she left, looking somewhat reluctant, I couldn't help but smile. It was just another day in our usual routine until that one evening. After returning home from work, Henry and I were called to the living room by Dad. Kenneth, Henry, I've decided to step down as president and move overseas. Move overseas? The sudden announcement left the room in stunned silence. Dad, however, wore a beaming smile. Yes, Mom and I have been planning this for some time. We're going to start a vineyard in the south of France. What? I couldn't help but let out a startled, high-pitched voice. As always, Dad was doing things at his own pace. Kenneth, I'm entrusting the presidency to you. Use your youthful perspective to transform the company. Wait, hold on. Shouldn't that be Henry, as the executive director? Henry is brilliant, almost too perfect. But a company runs on the hearts of its people. You, Kenneth, understand people's feelings. You can move their hearts. That's the kind of person I want as president. Dad gave a gentle smile, stood up, and said, Well, I'll go pack our things, before leaving the living room with Mom in a lighthearted manner. It was as if he were casually talking about tomorrow's weather. The living room was left filled with a heavy atmosphere. Henry. As I tried to call out to him, Henry had already stood up. His back seemed to carry unspoken thoughts. But Henry didn't turn around as he left the living room. The sound of his footsteps ascending the stairs echoed unusually loudly. I let out a deep sigh. There was still warm liquid left in my coffee cup. Dad's sudden announcement of his retirement. The abruptness of it all left my mind in disarray. President, huh? I exhaled slowly. Dad must have thought this through. I had come to know the field, recognized the faces of our employees, and built trust with our clients. Perhaps he decided to pass the baton after seeing how much I had grown. I have no choice but to do it. Before I realized it, my posture had straightened. The weight of the presidency was undeniably heavy. But I didn't need to shoulder it alone. With the support of the employees, Henry, and everyone else, I could build a new Scott Trading. I will protect this company, Dad. In the quiet of the evening, I made a solemn vow in the living room. A month had passed since I became president. There was a lot to learn about running a company. But Charlotte, who had worked closely with Dad as his secretary, supported me efficiently. Her straight black hair, composed demeanor, intelligent gaze, and gentle manner naturally put those around her at ease. However, behind her elegant appearance, she was astonishingly effective at her job. She could quickly organize complex matters and make precise decisions. Her presence was a tremendous source of reassurance for a novice president like me. Mr. Yates, here's today's schedule. Thank you. Oh, and Charlotte. I decided to go ahead with that suggestion from before, creating a space in the employee cafeteria where everyone can chat freely. Her eyes sparkled slightly. This will be a great opportunity to hear directly from the field. Exactly. Back in my father's time, there always seemed to be a wall between him and the employees. As we walked down the hallway talking, 2 new employees passed by and bowed politely. I smiled and greeted them. Good morning. I'm looking forward to your presentation today. What? Mr. Yates, you're coming to our presentation? Of course. Your proposal sounded interesting. The 2 exchanged delighted glances. Then, looking a bit buoyant with excitement, they walked off. I turned back to Charlotte. Charlotte, thanks for scheduling me to attend their presentation. No, Mr. Yates. Your goal of remembering every employee's name and face is progressing steadily. Charlotte smiled quietly. Charlotte, let's make it a great day. Yes, Mr. Yates. Her composed response straightened my posture as I stepped forward into a new day. Even as president, however, Henry continued to occupy my thoughts. It wasn't unusual for communication with him to be strained. I could live with that. What troubled me now was how often our opinions diverged. Kenneth. Just as I was wrapping up for the day, Henry walked into the president's office. There was a sharpness in his tone. He placed a thick file on my desk. Did you review the financial statements? Yes. A 105% increase compared to last year. I'd say that's decent. Decent? In this industry, only growing 5% is as good as declining. We're lagging behind in IT transformation, and labor costs keep rising. At this rate, the company our father built will. I want to avoid drastic changes. It's better to consider the employees' well-being, don't you think? I spoke calmly. However, Henry fixed me with a cold stare. In his eyes was a level of hostility I had never seen before. That's it. You always say it's for the employees, but isn't that just an excuse? You lack the resolve to be a leader. You're too afraid of being disliked. This surface-level kindness will ruin the company. That's not true. Let me be frank. I don't understand your management style. You're half-hearted as a leader. If you were really honoring Dad's legacy, there was a better way to do it. Valuing the employees' feelings is easy. But if your kindness ends up sinking the company, who's going to take responsibility? Each word was like a knife to my chest. I couldn't say anything and simply closed my mouth. After a moment of silence, Henry took a small breath and looked me straight in the eyes. Kenneth, hand over the company to me. What? What are you talking about, Henry? Just then, the door to the meeting room opened, and the board members began to file in one by one. What is this about, Henry? This is an emergency board meeting. A thin smile appeared on Henry's face. Actually, I've already been discussing a fundamental review of our management strategy with the board members individually. A chill ran through me. Henry had already laid the groundwork behind the scenes. What are you saying? A company isn't just a thing. It's a responsibility entrusted to us by Dad and a promise to the employees. It's not something you can just hand over like a toy or a book. A promise? A responsibility? Henry let out a cold laugh. This isn't the time for pretty words. If we stay on this course, the company will falter. Delayed IT adoption, soaring labor costs, and an over-reliance on outdated sales methods. Please take a look at the midterm management plan I've prepared. He distributed documents filled with numbers and graphs. The directors stared at the materials with serious expressions. Under my brother's management, the company will definitely fall into the red within 3 years. This isn't baseless speculation, it's a forecast based on meticulous analysis. Henry. Face reality, Kenneth. You've never beaten me at anything, not in grades, sports, or work. The numbers speak for themselves. Blood rushed to my head at his words. What did you just say? I ask you all, would you rather let the company collapse due to emotional decision-making or implement necessary reforms? Which is in the best interest of the shareholders? The directors' eyes turned toward me, their gazes sharp and piercing. Their expressions made it clear they had already made up their minds. Even though I've always been the better one, people keep praising my brother. Kenneth is kind, they say. But isn't that just superficial? A convenient cover for incompetence? At that moment, I found myself grabbing Henry by the collar. The atmosphere in the meeting room froze instantly. Kenneth! The directors jumped to their feet in alarm. Look, everyone! He's being emotional and resorting to violence. This is your current president. Slowly, I let go of him. The director's eyes filled with disappointment bore into my back. Fine. I'll hand over the company to you. My voice trembled. My fists shook with a mix of frustration and anger. But don't forget this company was built by Dad and the employees together. It's not your toy. One day, you'll pay the price for this choice. Henry simply stared at me, silent. In his eyes was a mix of satisfaction from his apparent victory and something indescribable. I bowed to the directors and left the meeting room. Out in the hallway, I leaned against the wall and felt something warm trailing down my cheek. Dad, I'm sorry. As a president and as an older brother, I've completely lost. The week after my resignation speech, Catherine visited me at home. Her usual playful expression was gone, replaced by an unusually serious demeanor. Seated on the living room sofa, she handed me an envelope. Kenneth, join my company. I'll offer you triple your current salary. What? Catherine, that's a bit much for a joke, don't you think? I'm serious. Catherine pressed the envelope into my hands. Hesitantly, I opened it to find an employment contract with incredibly favorable terms. Placing her hands firmly on the table, Catherine met my eyes directly. I've watched the way you work, how you interact with employees, your dedication to listening to the field, and most importantly, your ability to build trust with anyone. Losing you is a huge loss for Scott Trading. But for us, it's an incredible opportunity. Kenneth, there's still a place for you. A place where your abilities will be recognized and appreciated. Her words lit a warmth deep in my chest. I never knew you thought so highly of me, Catherine. Please. Who do you think I am? I'm your childhood friend. I know you better than anyone. Catherine raised her chin proudly, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. All right. I'd like to join NR Electric. When I extended my hand, Catherine, her cheeks slightly flushed, took it with a radiant smile. 3 months after joining NR Electric, I got settled into my role. I was soon assigned to a new project focused on the Southeast Asian market. Kenneth, this deal isn't going well. Do you have any ideas? Thomas, a veteran employee, came to me with a troubled expression. He explained that negotiations with a major electronics retailer in Malaysia had stalled. What exactly is the situation? They're saying our product prices are too high. But if we lower them any further, we won't break even. While reviewing the materials, I also checked the communications with the local staff. That's when I noticed something odd. There was a strange tension in the email exchanges. The replies from the other party felt vague and overly cautious, as if they were carefully choosing their words. When did this negotiation start? About 3 months ago. The tone of their messages has changed since the beginning, hasn't it? I laid the emails out chronologically and pointed it out. Look at this. At first, they were saying things like, "We're very interested in your products," with a positive tone. But then it gradually shifted to phrases like, "We'll review this internally," or "We'll consult with upper management." Yeah, so I thought it was about pricing. I don't think that's it. I pointed to the most recent email. This use of "we're sorry." For us, it's an apology, but in English-speaking parts of Asia, it's often just a preface. This person seems to be under a lot of pressure, don't they? Thomas's eyes widened. So, it's something other than pricing. It's the kind of pressure that comes with being young in a big negotiation. Why don't we try speaking with them directly? Thomas and I set up an online meeting with the local team. On the screen appeared the other party's representative, Kyle. He was young, energetic, and confident in appearance. But I could also see a hint of anxiety in his eyes. "We highly value the quality of your products." However, I gently interrupted him. "Excuse me, before we continue, may I ask how long you've been with your company?" It's been 2 years. Handling a major deal must be a lot of pressure." At those words, his expression changed. "To be honest, my boss has been pressuring me to secure a price reduction at all costs. But I understand the value of your products. And I'm caught in the middle. In that case, while we can't lower the price, we can offer added value to make up for it. I have 3 specific proposals. First, a technical training program for your local staff. This will include not just product knowledge but thorough instruction on Japanese-style quality management. Second, 24/7 after-sales support. This will cover immediate responses to any issues as well as comprehensive preventive maintenance. I carefully observed their reaction before continuing. And finally, we'll support training for your sales staff. With these as a foundation, we propose a 3-year plan to gradually expand the scale of our partnership. Our aim is to grow together as long-term partners. This approach will also help your young sales team improve their skills, and it will give us opportunities to communicate the true value of our products." Kyle's eyes lit up. "Let's proceed in that direction." And just like that, the stalled negotiation was successfully concluded. Thomas enthusiastically thanked me, saying, "Thanks so much, Kenneth." That marked the beginning of my growing reputation within the company. "Kenneth, do you have a moment? I've got something I need your advice on." Before I knew it, I was being approached multiple times a day. Why don't you think about it this way? Let's start by putting ourselves in their shoes and figuring out what they're looking for. Sales staff stuck in negotiations with overseas buyers, the planning team struggling to create effective materials for new products, and junior colleagues grappling with client interactions. I shared my experiences and the know-how I had gained from working in the field with them, little by little. Even in the break room, I naturally became the center of a circle. Sometimes it was work-related advice, and other times it was lighthearted small talk. In this space filled with laughter, I could see the employees' expressions growing brighter day by day. By the time I had fully adjusted to working at NR Electric, I was sitting alone in the break room one day when Catherine walked in and handed me a cup of coffee. As expected, Kenneth. You've already won everyone over. No, it's because everyone's been so cooperative. It's not just that. Catherine sat by the window, gazing out with a distant look in her eyes. Do you remember? Back in elementary school, I was terrified of talking to people. I could never say what I really wanted to and always ended up saying the opposite. She smiled wistfully. When a girl sitting next to me said, "Your pencil case is so cute," I really wanted to say, "Thank you, I like yours too." But instead, I snapped. It's nothing special. Oh. But you, Kenneth, you understood me. You'd say, Catherine just can't be honest. Especially when she's happy. You translated my feelings for everyone else. I depended on you completely, knowing you'd always have my back. Catherine wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. But then, in 6th grade, I realized I couldn't keep relying on you forever. Do you remember when I threw a birthday party and invited our classmates? When it was winding down, I didn't want everyone to leave. But instead of saying that, I blurted, "Just go already." As I listened, I, too, recalled that moment. One of the girls asked, "Then why did you invite us?" "Just to show off how rich you are." And then others chimed in, saying things like, "Catherine always acts so stuck up," and "we shouldn't have come." I couldn't say anything in response. But you, Kenneth, you stepped in and said, "What Catherine really means is that she wants you all to stay longer." That smoothed things over. But that was when I realized I'd end up relying on you forever if I didn't change. Catherine looked straight at me. So I made a decision. I decided to practice so that my feelings and words wouldn't contradict each other anymore. One small step at a time. First, learning to say good morning. Then, being able to say thank you sincerely. There wasn't a trace of the timidity that used to color her eyes. You changed my life, Kenneth. That's why I want to be there for you now. Being able to say what I feel so honestly, like this, is thanks to you. I didn't know how to respond, so I silently sipped my coffee. To be honest, Catherine continued, I've wanted you to join my company for a long time. But I never said anything. Ha! Startled by her sudden change in tone, I looked up. Her face had turned serious, her gaze intent. I always assumed you'd take over Scott Trading. Even though Henry was the executive director, I could see you were better suited to being president. Watching you work there, smiling alongside the employees, it seemed like the most natural fit. Catherine turned her gaze back out the window and spoke softly. I believe I know your abilities better than anyone. Your understanding of people. Your kindness in connecting with their feelings, those are things I've always admired about you. I've always thought those qualities were amazing. And I've always cherished you. A faint blush crept across her cheeks. My heart began to race. Just then, Ted, the department head, entered the break room. Kenneth, Mr. Abbott from Anderson Trading is here to see you. Oh, okay. I'll be right there. Breaking my gaze from Catherine, I left the break room feeling a bit unsettled. When I entered the meeting room, Mr. Abbott stood up with a bright smile. Kenneth, it's been a while. He wore a flashy gold watch that gleamed as he grinned. I was surprised when I heard you'd stepped down as president. I wondered how things would turn out, but here you are, doing well at NR Electric. Impressive as always. There was a condescending tone to his voice. Straightening the lapels of his expensive suit, he gave me a knowing look. And I bet the pay's good, huh? Not that I ever doubted you'd land on your feet. Ha ha. His laugh, brimming with smugness, echoed through the room. His ostentatious manner, typical of someone eager to flaunt their success, left me no choice but to respond politely. Thank you. I look forward to our discussion today. We shook hands and began the meeting. Anderson Trading is one of NR Electric's business partners. It was also a client of Scott Trading and is known as a trading company specializing in emerging markets across Asia. Recently, it has achieved remarkable growth by leveraging partnerships with major companies like Scott Trading and NR Electric. The negotiations proceeded smoothly, and we finalized the deal with a signature. That was when Mr. Abbott glanced around the room and lowered his voice. I've heard Scott Trading isn't doing so well since Henry became president. But I'm sure you already know that, right? He took a sip of his coffee, his expression full of implications. I've been hearing about a forced push for IT reforms that ignore the field, benefits cuts disguised as cost savings, and aggressive price hikes that have strained relationships with clients. On top of that, talented employees are leaving one after another. At this rate, Mr. Abbott stopped mid-sentence. But it was clear from his tone that he was implying, collapse is near. He let out a deep sigh. Kenneth, the reason I brought this up is that I'm worried about my daughter, Charlotte. She's working hard as the secretary to the president at Scott Trading, but I'm concerned about her future if things keep going like this. Mr. Abbott lowered his voice further, watching me carefully. Yes, Mr. Abbott's daughter, Charlotte, is the secretary to the president at Scott Trading. She must now be working loyally under Henry. If the company were to falter, her position would also be at risk. It's only natural for her father, Mr. Abbott, to be concerned. That's why I'd like you to take Charlotte under your care. Take her under my care? Ah, you mean bring her to NR Electric? If that's the case. No, not that. I'm thinking of you as her husband. What? I couldn't help but stare at Mr. Abbott in shock. You of all people must understand Charlotte's qualities. You had her by your side as your secretary for a while, didn't you? She's meticulous, capable, and dependable. And I think Charlotte herself wouldn't be against marrying you. I was taken aback. I was well aware of Charlotte's exceptional capabilities from personal experience. But still, sensing my hesitation, Mr. Abbott placed his hands on the desk and leaned forward. How about at least meeting her formally? You could talk about more than work. I'm sure you'd see how suitable she'd be as your wife. Let me be blunt, Charlotte is beautiful, kind, and my pride and joy. It was true that Charlotte's beauty was well known in the company. But I'd never thought of her that way before. I took a deep breath. If I agreed, it could strengthen my relationship with Anderson Trading. A simple meeting wouldn't hurt, right? All right. I'll agree to the formal meeting. I nodded quietly. Wonderful. That's the Kenneth I know, decisive. Mr. Abbott left with a broad smile on his face. After he was gone, I worked through the afternoon in a distracted, absent-minded state. Noticing this, Catherine approached my desk after work. Kenneth, what's wrong? You've been acting strange since the meeting with Anderson Trading. I hesitated for a moment about whether to tell her. But there was no reason to keep it from her. Actually, I'm set to have a formal meeting with Mr. Abbott's daughter, Charlotte. What? Catherine's expression froze for a moment. Of course, it's just a formality. It's important for the company to maintain a good relationship with Anderson Trading. Even if it's just a meeting. I spoke as if trying to convince myself. Catherine stared straight into my eyes, her lips trembling slightly. I see. Her voice lacked its usual brightness, sounding hollow instead. Suddenly, Catherine stood up. Her profile, illuminated by the setting sun, seemed lonely and fragile. The formal meeting was held in the lounge of a luxury hotel overlooking the harbor. From the large windows, the shimmering sea and passing ships were visible. Kenneth, thank you for waiting. Mr. and Mrs. Abbott arrived, their faces lit up with broad smiles. Behind them was Charlotte. Charlotte was dressed in a navy dress. Unlike her usual composed and professional demeanor as a secretary, she showed an expression with a touch of youthful innocence. I bowed politely to them. Not at all. I'm sorry my parents couldn't make it back from overseas. As I said, I don't mind. You're passionate about winemaking in the south of France, right? We'll take care of things as your stand-ins. Just make sure you two get along well over there. With those words, Mr. and Mrs. Abbott excused themselves from the table. As we sat down, a tense silence filled the air. Thank you for meeting with me. Charlotte bowed politely. No, thank you. What followed was a series of formal conversations. Topics ranged from school days to hobbies. Charlotte's responses were impeccably polite, and it was clear she was doing her best to meet her parents' expectations. By the way, how are things at Scott Trading? Are you getting along with Henry? I asked casually, but for a brief moment, Charlotte's expression clouded over. Then, to my surprise, she suddenly leaned forward. Her hand reached across the table to grab mine. Kenneth, I have a favor to ask. Her voice was a whisper. Charlotte's breath brushed against my cheek. Startled, I tried to pull away, but she tightened her grip on my hand. Please. Help me. You're the only one I can count on. Her voice trembled. Tears, like pearls, rolled down her cheeks. I gasped. The expression Charlotte wore now was filled with an earnestness that was unimaginable from her usual composed demeanor as a secretary. Take your time. Please, tell me everything. I spoke quietly. Outside the large window, a yacht with white sails billowed as it quietly left the harbor. A few days later, I was back in the meeting room to negotiate with Mr. Abbott. That day, we were set to finalize a major contract with Anderson Trading. The deal was to jointly market NR Electric's new products in the Asian region. The agreement promised significant profits by combining Mr. Abbott's sales prowess with NR Electric's extensive network. The contract was already prepared. Kenneth. Mr. Abbott entered the meeting room with a broad smile. In high spirits, he sat down leisurely in his chair. So, how did things go with my daughter? Sipping his coffee, Mr. Abbott gave me a knowing look. We had a lively conversation, and I believe we're building a good relationship. Ah, wonderful. Wonderful. Mr. Abbott leaned back in his luxurious leather chair, beaming with satisfaction. I knew it, Kenneth, you're different. From the start, I believed you were the right person to lead Scott Trading. But now, seeing you thrive at NR Electric, I think it's even better. This company is poised for great growth. Honestly, stepping down from that tiny company was the right move for you, huh? He flaunted his expensive watch and continued in a sycophantic tone. Take Charlotte as your wife, and we'll both be secure. This is your time, Kenneth. Let's make a fortune together. He pulled out a branded pen, grinning as he placed the contract in front of me. Now, let's seal the deal. Consider it a pre-celebration. I've included some special terms, think of it as part of Charlotte's dowry. Let's push this business forward together. I must decline. What? The fawning smile on Mr. Abbott's face froze instantly. I'm sorry, but I'm withdrawing from this contract entirely. Wait a minute. What are you saying? The meeting went well, and this would strengthen our company's relationship. An arranged meeting and a business negotiation are separate matters. Mr. Abbott leaned forward in a panic, but I calmly and firmly delivered my words. A heavy silence filled the meeting room. Mr. Abbott's face contorted with anger and confusion. Why? How could you cancel such a major deal so suddenly, and after the arranged meeting with my daughter? This is outrageous. Mr. Abbott spoke through clenched teeth. His voice carried a mix of anger and desperation. I've done some research on your company, I said quietly. What? Let's start with your dealings in Vietnam. Manipulating prices unfairly, overcharging large distributors while undercutting small businesses, and destabilizing the market in the process. Then there's the falsified invoices in Indonesia selling counterfeit products as genuine ones at inflated prices, bribing quality control officers and falsifying inspection records. I paused before continuing. And in the Philippines, your pattern of defaulting on debts to local companies. You've gone from one partner to another, leaving unpaid balances in your wake. These actions tarnish the credibility of a company like NR Electric. Mr. Abbott's face turned pale as the blood drained from it. That's impossible. His face now ashen, he fumbled with the collar of his expensive suit, trying to adjust it nervously. These are baseless rumors. You have no proof. His trembling hand reached for a glass of water, almost dropping it. Then, fueled by anger, Mr. Abbott stood up and slammed the table. How dare you accuse me without evidence? You abandoned your family's company and wormed your way into another. And now you dare lecture me? You insolent coward. His face, red with rage, twisted as his expensive glasses sat crooked on his nose. This kind of insult. I won't stand for it. I'll sue you for defamation. Yes, I'll call my lawyer right now and... Mr. Abbott pounded the table once more. At that moment, the door to the meeting room burst open and Charlotte rushed in. Stop it. Dad, please, don't make things worse. Mr. Abbott's eyes widened and his expression turned to one of shock. What are you doing here? Get out. He reached out to grab her arm, but Charlotte stepped back, shaking her head firmly. No. I'm going to testify. Charlotte reached into the pocket of her suit. With trembling fingers, she pulled out a USB drive. Her hand, holding the small blue device aloft, shook slightly, but her eyes shone with unwavering determination. This USB contains all the evidence, records of the price manipulation in Vietnam, proof of the falsified invoices in Indonesia, inflated charges to large distributors, the undercutting of small businesses, and the inventory log showing counterfeit products. It also includes proof of bribes paid to quality control officers. I collected all of it myself. Holding the USB aloft, she looked directly at her father. Charlotte, are you trying to disgrace your own father? After everything I've done to raise you? Are you going to betray me like this? Mr. Abbott stood, his voice trembling with fury. Betrayal? Charlotte's voice was steady, yet carried a quiet intensity. You wanted to marry me off to the son of a Thai business tycoon. Then to a Filipino entrepreneur's heir. When those fell through, you arranged for Kenneth, all for the company's benefit. My happiness was never part of the equation, was it? Mr. Abbott's expression hardened. Taking a deep breath, Charlotte continued, her voice resolute. I admit, I was the obedient daughter you wanted. I thought it was my duty to be a tool for your plans. But I can't take it anymore. I could endure it if it were just about me. But I won't stand by while you use other people's lives as pawns for your business schemes. If it means protecting someone I care about, I'll reveal everything. Fighting back tears, she locked eyes with her father. Mr. Abbott clenched his teeth. You're willing to ruin me for this? Think of the parents who raised you. His shout filled the room, but Charlotte raised her head slowly. Her eyes, though filled with tears, shone with determination. Yes. I lived my life obeying everything you and Mom told me. Because I loved you both. Her quiet words seemed to shake Mr. Abbott. Do you remember when I started high school? Back when the company was still struggling? You worked late into the night. And Mom took on multiple part-time jobs. Just so I could have a uniform. Her voice quivered as she continued. I knew that you skipped meals to cover my tuition and that Mom pawned her clothes to buy me textbooks, which is why I wanted to be a good daughter. Meet your expectations, become a secretary, earn a good salary, and repay you by doing whatever you both asked of me. Charlotte took a deep breath and continued. But the person you are now is different. Deceiving and hurting others, that's not the father I knew. You were someone who lived honestly even during hard times, always putting me first. That's the father I loved. The color drained from Mr. Abbott's face. I truly respected you and Mom. That's why it's so hard for me to see you like this now. Deceiving and using people for money. That's not who you were. I want the parents I loved so much back, the way you used to be. Her words were laden with profound love and sadness. I could feel the depth of her emotions as if they were my own. Soft afternoon sunlight streamed into the meeting room. In that light, Charlotte's tears glimmered quietly. Mr. Abbott's eyes were also faintly moist. Charlotte. Mr. Abbott collapsed into his chair, as if his strength had left him. His eyes seemed to be looking back at a distant past. When I was a child, I was laughed at all the time. My shoes had holes, and we couldn't even pay for school lunches. When I visited friends' houses, I'd hear, "That poor kid from the rundown family is here." My mom worked late into the night, but even then, I never had a single thing that other kids did. He clenched his fists. So when you were born, I made a promise. I swore you would never feel that kind of shame. I wanted you to have a life you could live proudly, with your head held high. That was all I thought about as I pushed forward recklessly. But somewhere along the way, my intentions got twisted. The more money I made, the more I wanted. I started deceiving clients, trampling on employees. Before I realized it, I was running not for your happiness, but to heal my own wounds. Mr. Abbott covered his face with trembling hands. What have I done? I've destroyed everything important with my own hands. Your kindness, our family bond, the pride of living honestly. I threw it all away. He bowed his head deeply. Please, let me start over. With the company, with our family, with everything. I'll live honestly from now on. Dad. Charlotte gently embraced him. As we left the meeting room together, Catherine was standing in the hallway. As expected, Kenneth. To think you could reform Mr. Abbott. You overheard? Catherine didn't answer my question. She pressed her lips together and simply stared at me intently. It wasn't me. It was all Charlotte. At the arranged meeting, she confided in me about the wrongdoing. I'm sure it took a lot of courage to do that. That's why everything was thanks to her. Thank you, Charlotte. I smiled at Charlotte. She blushed slightly and muttered, "That's not true." For a brief moment, Catherine's expression clouded. Now, it's time to help Charlotte, Catherine said softly. Yes, Charlotte replied, nodding faintly. Ha! Charlotte gave a small nod in response to my words, prompting Catherine to tilt her head in curiosity. Without delay, the three of us, Catherine, Charlotte, and I, headed to Scott Trading right after resolving things with Mr. Abbott. In the meeting room, just after noon. The door opened, and Henry entered. He seemed noticeably thinner. Even his suit looked somewhat worn and tired. Kenneth. There was an unfamiliar shadow in Henry's voice. Charlotte and Catherine watched him silently, their gazes steady. An indescribable tension filled the room. It's been a while. How's the company doing? I tried to sound as natural as possible. Henry avoided my eyes and forced a smile. Of course, it's doing fine. Unlike your leisurely management style, mine doesn't waste time. But his voice trembled slightly. Charlotte leaned forward. President Henry, let's stop pretending. If you keep pushing forward like this, the company will go bankrupt. Your employees will be left stranded. Enough! Henry's shout suddenly cut through the air. His fists were clenched so tightly his knuckles had turned white. What's the meaning of this? Did you come here to laugh at me? Kenneth, Charlotte, even Catherine. All of you, here to mock my failures. Tears welled up in Henry's eyes. The strong facade he had maintained began to crumble, revealing the look of a child seeking help. That's not it. We came here today to propose an M&A. What? Henry's eyes widened in surprise. Catherine took out her phone. I've analyzed Scott Trading's performance over the past 6 months. IT integration has certainly progressed, but it's come at the cost of trust with your clients and a rise in employee turnover. As Charlotte said, it will be difficult to keep the company afloat if this continues. Catherine's voice was firm, stripped of her usual playful tone. Henry remained silent, his head lowered as he clenched his fists tightly. Scott Trading has long-standing expertise as a market leader. You have a solid track record in Asia. And you have a talented president. She looked directly at Henry. With NR Electric's brand strength and funding and Scott Trading's experience and reputation, we can create real synergy. We can protect employee jobs and rebuild relationships with clients step by step. This isn't an acquisition, it's a merger of equals. The traditions of Scott Trading will absolutely be preserved. A moment of silence filled the meeting room. Henry slowly raised his head. Uncertainty still lingered in his eyes, but a faint glimmer of hope was beginning to shine through. Why? Henry's voice was hoarse. Why? Why can't I ever beat you, Kenneth? I'm smarter than you, I work harder, and I can handle even the toughest projects on my own. But still. I stood calmly, facing Henry as he clenched his trembling fists. Henry, it's because you're too perfect. You're so capable that you've ended up missing something important. What? Everyone has limits, strengths, and weaknesses. But you can't see that because you can do everything. Sales, accounting, planning, you handle them all with ease. So you end up expecting everyone else to do the same. When you delegate, you still end up taking everything back because you think, I can do it faster myself. I looked directly into Henry's eyes. His expression began to shift, little by little. No matter how perfect a report you create, it's meaningless if no one understands it. No matter how efficient a new system is, it's useless if the field teams can't master it. Leadership means understanding those human aspects. Not everyone can be like you. And that's not a flaw. It's about recognizing people's limits and still trusting them. It's about walking together, even if it means taking a longer route. That's how you move an organization forward. Afternoon sunlight poured into the room. Tears began to fall from Henry's eyes. I always thought I was better than you, Kenneth. Smarter, more capable, able to handle everything alone. But deep down, I always knew that wasn't true. Henry let out a deep sigh. I envied you, Kenneth. Everyone who met you liked you, classmates, employees, clients, everyone. You always had people around you, always smiling. His voice faltered. Do you remember? When I was in high school, I brought my girlfriend home. At first, she liked me. But after talking to you, she said, your brother is such a wonderful person. She never smiled at me the way she did with you. Eventually, she told me she liked you and broke up with me. Henry covered his face with his hands. The sunlight streaming and illuminated Henry's shoulders, casting long shadows on the floor. Lowering his hands slowly, Henry looked at Charlotte. His tired eyes were filled with resignation and sadness. Charlotte must have fallen for you too, right? You even had an arranged meeting. Of course she would. You're so much better than me, bright, kind, trusted by everyone. Even Charlotte must. Henry's voice trailed off, tinged with self-deprecation. Charlotte gasped at his words. That's not true. My voice was quiet but firm, resonating clearly in the room. Henry looked at me, his eyes widening in surprise. Do you know why she agreed to the arranged meeting with me? Because she likes you. That's wrong. She did it all for you. Henry wore a confused expression. Charlotte was desperate. She said, "Please help Scott trading in Henry. I can't bear to see him suffer any longer," and she bowed her head to me at the matchmaking meeting. What? I've known for a while. I knew you and Charlotte were dating. Anyone could tell just by the way you two looked at each other at work. Henry averted his gaze slightly, looking uncomfortable. That's why I agreed to the matchmaking meeting. I knew there had to be a reason why someone as serious as Charlotte would take such an action. It was clear she was cornered and felt she had no choice. I continued slowly. And someone important to my younger brother came to me for help. There was no way I could just stand by and do nothing. Tears welled up in Henry's eyes. "I took the president's seat from you, Kenneth, because of Charlotte," Henry said, his voice trembling. At the time, Charlotte and I were together. We were even thinking about marriage. But Mr. and Mrs. Abbott were against it. They said, "Our daughter marrying a second son? Ridiculous." Henry continued, still looking down. "You're just the second son. My daughter should marry the president of a top-tier company," they said as they dragged Charlotte from one arranged meeting to another. That's why I was so desperate. I thought if I became the president, they'd finally accept my relationship with her. That's why I went as far as forcing you out to take this position. Henry's voice caught as he spoke. But things didn't go well. The numbers dropped, employees started leaving, and Mr. Abbott said, "I'm worried about my daughter's future with a company like this." Eventually, he and his wife gave up on me entirely. I wanted to do it all for Charlotte, but in the end, I only made her suffer. Henry raised his head to look at Charlotte. "Charlotte has always been my light. Ever since I joined the company, she's always smiled at me, spoken kind words, and supported me. No matter how tough it got, her presence made everything brighter. Even when I acted high-handedly or was about to hurt someone, she gently guided me. She taught me the warmth of people, something I lacked because I demanded too much perfection. That's why I couldn't bear to lose her." Henry's voice cracked. At that moment, Charlotte gently took Henry's hand. "I was proud to work by your side, Henry," Charlotte said softly. "Not because you were president, but because I was moved by the way you fought your loneliness." Charlotte gazed at Henry and continued softly. "You always forge ahead on the path you believe is right, even when no one understands you. Even when your perfection drives people away. You never compromise." But I understood. I knew that deep down, you were more sensitive and thoughtful than anyone else. Rewriting meeting documents over and over to make them clearer, using harsh words because you wanted others to grow. I've watched your clumsy yet earnest efforts more closely than anyone else." Charlotte's gentle voice resonated in the room. Henry reached out and gently clasped her hands in his. "I'm sorry. I truly am. I lost sight of everything. I wanted to prove I could do it without my brother, to make the company bigger than ever. And I became obsessed. I ignored your feelings, everyone's feelings. From now on, it'll be different. I want to rebuild Scott Trading together. With you and everyone else. We'll think about the merger with NR Electric and take it one step at a time. That's the Henry I love." A tender atmosphere enveloped the two of them. After a moment, Henry slowly turned to face me. "Kenneth, I deeply apologize for taking the company from you the way I did." Henry's voice trembled with regret and sincerity. He bowed deeply, and I walked over to him. "It's fine now. But you realized what truly matters, didn't you? That's enough." I placed a hand on Henry's shoulder. Henry lifted his head and nodded, his eyes glistening with emotion. Charlotte quietly moved closer to Henry, standing by his side. The sunlight gently embraced us all. After leaving Scott Trading, Catherine and I headed to a nearby port. The sea breeze softly stirred Catherine's hair. "Kenneth, you liked Charlotte, didn't you?" Catherine asked abruptly, flashing a mischievous smile. "Ha! Come on. I saw how flustered you got. That's not. You even went through with the matchmaking meeting. You wouldn't have done that unless you were serious." Catherine twirled in front of me, wagging her finger teasingly. "Besides, she's so capable and beautiful. Who wouldn't fall for her? Even I might have." She clutched her chest dramatically, sighing with theatrical flair. "That's not it. Liar. I know you, Kenneth. Your kindness and thoughtfulness, I've known them better than anyone else since elementary school." Suddenly, Catherine's teasing tone disappeared. Leaning against the railing by the dock, her profile was softly illuminated by the melancholic glow of the setting sun. "I've always loved that about you, Kenneth. Your kindness to everyone, never shallow or insincere. And that's why I knew you'd take Charlotte seriously." Her voice trembled slightly. I took a step closer to her. "That's not true," I said. "I accepted the matchmaking meeting for Henry and Charlotte's sake, nothing more. Besides, I already knew they were together. And there's someone I've loved for a long time." Catherine's eyes widened. "What?" "I met her when we were in elementary school. She was the girl sitting in the corner of the classroom, reading a book by herself. When I talked to her, she wouldn't smile easily, but I could tell she was lonely." Catherine's cheeks flushed faintly. She hid her kindness behind harsh words and covered her shyness with bravado. "But I knew she was someone who cared deeply for others. She worked hard to overcome her weaknesses. Watching her grow gave me strength and taught me to understand people better. I wanted to keep up with her." Catherine grabbed my sleeve suddenly. "Stop beating around the bush. Just say it already. Who is she?" Her voice quivered with anticipation. I gently pulled her into an embrace. "It's you, Catherine. I've loved you since we were kids." "Me too. I've loved you all this time." Catherine's soft voice lingered in the air. Our shadows stretched long in the sunset. Only the gentle sound of waves broke the stillness at the dock. The following month, Anderson Trading filed for bankruptcy. The exposure of fraudulent transactions led many business partners to terminate their contracts. The company's total liabilities exceeded $10 million. "Kenneth, I'm so sorry." At the time, I was blinded by greed. Mr. Abbott said, bowing deeply to me in a small cafe. His wife, Evelyn, sat beside him, bowing her head just as deeply. Gone was the arrogance from Mr. Abbott's voice. But Charlotte was right. There are things far more important than money or power. Losing the company has taught me that the hard way. Mr. Abbott gazed quietly into his cup of coffee. Evelyn and I talked it over. "We're going to start over, build a new company from scratch." "Start over?" "Yes," Evelyn said with a faint smile. "I've always been skilled at appraising antiques. I want to use that knowledge to start a small trading business. The scale will be much smaller, but this time, we'll be honest and work together as a family. I want Charlotte to be proud of us again." Mr. Abbott's voice carried a firm resolve. I nodded silently. The steam rising from the coffee cup swayed gently in the air. After the M&A, Scott Trading regained its footing. When I visited the company with Henry and Catherine, it was clear that vitality had returned. Young employees greeted each other with smiles, and meetings with clients in the lobby exuded a friendly atmosphere. "Good morning, President Henry." Elliot, a team leader from the sales department, said cheerfully as he passed in the hallway. "That recent negotiation went great. The client said they were deeply impressed by your sincerity. It's all thanks to everyone's support." Henry, bowing humbly, was met with warm gazes from the employees. On the ring finger of his left hand, a subtle platinum ring gleamed softly. As I entered the meeting room, Charlotte was distributing documents. Her posture remained as upright as ever, but her expression had softened. On her finger, the same design of platinum ring as Henry's shone gently. When everyone had gathered, and the materials were distributed, Henry stood at the front and began speaking in a calm voice. "This is the quarterly performance report. Since our merger with NR Electric, our market share in Asia has increased by 15%. The introduction of the new system, shaped by input from the field, has proven to be highly effective." As I glanced over the documents, I found myself smiling. Beyond the numbers lay visible change. Employee turnover had significantly improved. Trust from business partners was gradually being restored. Most importantly, Henry's once tense shoulders now appeared more relaxed. This success is thanks to all of you. I'm grateful you've stood by me. I hope to continue relying on your support as we move forward. Thank you. Henry's words were met with warm applause in the conference room. Henry and Charlotte exchanged joyful glances. Their rings glimmered in the morning sunlight. That evening, at a seaside restaurant in the port town, it was just Catherine and me, having dinner together. Through the glass windows, the harbor was painted in the hues of sunset. The candle on the table softly illuminated Catherine's gentle expression. Even Henry and Charlotte looked so happy. Catherine spoke, gazing into her wineglass. Yes, they did. During today's meeting, their matching rings were really shining. It makes me a little jealous. What? I mean, even though we're dating, Kenneth, you're not really romantic, are you? It feels like we're still stuck in that childhood friend phase. Catherine lowered her gaze. I quietly stood up and knelt beside her. What are you doing? Catherine's voice rose in surprise. The other diners in the restaurant began turning their attention to us. Without hesitation, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small blue case. I'd been carrying this with me for a while. I wasn't sure when would be the right time to say it. What? Catherine. Slowly, I opened the case, revealing a platinum ring that softly shimmered in the light. I've seen your true kindness up close ever since we were kids. The delicate feelings hidden behind your sharp words. The warmth beneath your bravado, and your efforts to overcome your own shortcomings, every bit of it is precious to me. With you by my side, I know I can be happy, no matter what. I believe in that. So, please, marry me. Kenneth. Catherine covered her face with both hands, her shoulders trembling slightly. After a moment, she slowly lowered her hands, revealing tears streaming down her cheeks. You, proposing at a moment that feels like you've seen right through my heart. It's not fair. But that's exactly what I love about you. I want to marry you too, Kenneth. Catherine smiled radiantly. The ring slid smoothly onto her slender finger. Around the restaurant, a warm round of applause broke out. Outside the window, the lights of the harbor began to flicker on one by one, as if blessing us. No one can live alone. No matter how capable or successful, it means nothing without connections to others. Henry suffered in solitude, and I failed to notice my brother's cries for help. Charlotte's determination, Catherine's kindness, and the trust of our colleagues. With their support, we came to understand what true strength really means. It's not about intelligence or status. It's about the courage to take a step forward for someone else, the compassion to connect with another's feelings. And above all, it's about treasuring the bonds that tie people together. True strength lies in the ability to connect with others. That is a truth I want to carry forward with pride. My name is James. I'm a 40-year-old office worker. I've been working for the same company for a long time, dedicating myself solely to sales. Today, I was heading to a client meeting to close a $30 million deal. The sky was clear, and I was convinced that the day would end as one of the best in my life. At least, that's what I thought. But life is full of surprises. On my way to the client's office, I stumbled upon a man covered in blood. It wasn't a traffic accident, and I immediately suspected that he might have been assaulted. I knew getting involved might lead to trouble. Still, I couldn't just walk away. Before I realized it, I had approached him and asked, "Are you okay?" The man was so weak that he couldn't even groan. "This is bad. I'll call an ambulance right away." "Hang in there." I said those words as I pulled out my phone. Shortly after, the ambulance arrived, and a paramedic approached me. Apparently, as the person who found the injured man, they had questions for me and wanted me to ride along in the ambulance. But if I did that, I would definitely be late for the meeting. And being late would mean losing the $30 million deal. What should I do? While I was hesitating, the paramedics practically dragged me into the ambulance. Oh no. I got in the ambulance. "This is bad, but I'll call and explain the situation once we get to the hospital." However, even after arriving at the hospital, I couldn't make the call until over 2 hours past the scheduled time. 2 hours late. This is a disaster. But the person on the other end responded coldly and matter-of-factly, leaving no room for discussion. This is bad. Maybe I should call back later once they've calmed down. In the end, despite the clear blue sky, my heart was clouded as I returned to the office. Upon arrival, I was immediately told to report to the CEO's office, and I braced myself as I knocked on the door. Even if I get scolded, it'll be temporary. I'll apologize and get through this. A response came from the other side of the door, and as I stepped inside, I immediately realized how naive I had been. This was because Mr. Andrews' face was sterner than I had ever seen it. This isn't something I can smooth over with an apology. I stepped forward and immediately began to apologize. "I'm sorry about the meeting." Before I could finish, he shouted, "What on earth were you thinking? Being late for such an important meeting is utterly unacceptable. Are you trying to bankrupt this company?" "No, of course not. I got a call from their representative and they were furious." "I'm sorry. What were you doing? Oversleeping?" "No, I arrived in the area 30 minutes early as usual. But I came across an injured man and had to call an ambulance." "How does calling an ambulance make you this late?" "Well, they asked me to ride with them so they could get my statement." "And you just went along with it?" "Yes, I was the only one around who could help." "You should have left it to someone else." "What if this costs the company everything?" "I didn't think it would lead to that, but I knew being late was bad. I planned to call as soon as I got to the hospital, but I couldn't." "Why couldn't you? You knew how important this meeting was. Why didn't you refuse to go with them? You know better than this. How long have you been in sales?" "I'm really sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix everything. I plan to call them once the representative has calmed down. I'm sure they'll understand if I explain the situation. Then, I'm confident we can get back to the negotiation table." "What are you talking about? Do you honestly think it's that simple?" "The client representative said they never want to see your face again. They also said they no longer wish to do business with our company." "What? It's that serious?" "What you did caused this situation. I'll head over to the client right away and explain everything in person." "They won't listen to you. Can't you see how furious they are?" "But, do you think you're some kind of hero because you helped someone?" "No, that's not what I was trying to do." "Who was this person you helped? Was it a beautiful woman?" "No, it was a middle-aged man." "Was he wealthy?" "I have no idea." "Then why bother helping him if he wasn't even rich?" "What? There are plenty of poor people in the world. Helping one of them won't make any difference. Someone else would have helped them anyway." "No, there was no one else around." "It was just me." "So what? What does that matter?" Our company is on the verge of collapsing, and you're over here playing the hero. I see. What's with that half-hearted response? Tell me, how will you take responsibility if this company goes under because of you? If the company collapses, I can't take responsibility. But I still believe helping someone in need is the right thing to do. If there had been anyone else there, I would have left it to them. But there wasn't. I couldn't just walk away. That's the problem. Doing the right thing doesn't always mean doing what's beneficial. All you've achieved is self-satisfaction. No, this wasn't about self-satisfaction. Wouldn't you help someone in need in that situation, Mr. Andrews? Anyone would want to help if they saw someone bleeding out like that. And so what? What? And so what if that's true? Well, I mean, wouldn't you? Do you think I would have done the same, helping someone when my company might collapse, knowing that if the company goes under, the employees and their lives would fall apart, and yet you still think I'd help someone like that? You've always been too soft. Never growing out of it, just like the time you were late for an important meeting because you helped a pregnant woman in labor. Which achieved nothing, because the only thing that truly matters is the company, not someone else's life. That's too cruel. Isn't there anything more important than human lives? Think about what happened here. By saving that one person's life, you've put this entire company and its employees at risk. $30 million is gone because of you. Are you saying it's not about the employees, but your company you care about? That's exactly what I'm saying. My company comes first. Protecting it is the only way to protect the employees. And since you don't get that, you're fired. What? You're firing me just like that? Write your resignation and disappear. You can't just fire me out of the blue like this. It's unfair dismissal. Unfair? What about you nearly bankrupting the company? You think I want to see your face here every day after this? Well, I didn't mean it that way. Then get out of here. After being told all that, it was clear that saying anything more would be pointless. I returned to my desk and began packing up my belongings. Meanwhile, something alarming was happening at the reception area. A group of men who unmistakably looked like gangs had shown up and were causing a commotion. This company had never had any dealings with gangs, nor had I ever heard of any connection to them. Understandably, the receptionist's face was frozen in fear. Bring out that punt from this morning. The demand came from Travis, the underboss of the Sanders gang, who was flanked by a group of men in black suits. Later, I heard that Travis claimed he neither intended to intimidate nor shout at the receptionist. Still, he couldn't understand why she had been so frightened. However, terrified by the sight of gang, the receptionist contacted Mr. Andrews. At first, Mr. Andrews hung up the phone after saying, "Send them away." However, after another call came from reception a short while later, he decided to check out the situation himself and headed to the front desk. Just as I was walking near the reception area, carrying a box of my personal belongings, I happened to overhear the commotion. "What do you mean by this morning? I know he's one of your employees, so bring out the guy from this morning." "I'm not sure what you mean." Even Mr. Andrews seemed baffled, clearly unsure who they were talking about. But I thought it had nothing to do with me. With that in mind, I attempted to pass by unnoticed. However, Travis spotted me and shouted, "That's him." Hearing "that's him," I took another step forward, thinking there was no way he meant me. But when I glanced back, his finger was unmistakably pointing in my direction. Seeing this, Mr. Andrews grabbed my arm. "Is it this man?" "Yeah, that's him." "In that case, by all means, take him. He was just fired from our company moments ago, so he has nothing to do with us anymore. You're free to do whatever you like with him." To my astonishment, Mr. Andrews handed me over to the gang without hesitation. I was utterly shocked. I never expected him to say such a thing, and more than that, I couldn't believe he would make such a remark to actual gang. thinking it was some kind of joke. However, the gang, seemingly unfazed, grabbed my arm and ordered in a commanding tone, "Get in the car." Are you kidding me? Is today cursed? That's what I thought, but they were gangs. Saying the wrong thing could get me punched or worse. Besides, having just been fired, I was in a state of reckless abandon, ready to face whatever came my way. Understood. With that, I did as Travis instructed and got into the car. Although outwardly compliant, in my heart I was thinking, I'll never forgive Mr. Andrews, I'll hold a grudge against him forever. As I was driven away, I had no idea where we were heading. What exactly do you need from me? You helped a man this morning, didn't you? Yes, I did. That man is the leader of our Sanders gang. What? Really? Yeah. If you hadn't helped him, he would have been on his way to the other side by now. Why, though? I wondered, but I couldn't ask. Whether it was a gang turf war or an assassination attempt on the leader, there was no way I could bring that up. So, I decided to stick to a safer topic. Is Mr. Sanders doing okay now? Yeah, he's doing fine. Thanks to your quick thinking, he got treated in time. He's in good shape now. After being so close to crossing the river Styx, could someone really recover that quickly? Or were they just exaggerating? I wasn't sure about the details, but for the moment, all I could say was, "That's good to hear." As we continued our polite conversation, the car arrived at a hospital. I was then guided to a VIP hospital room. The room was unlike anything I had ever seen before. Not only was it spacious, but it also had a luxurious sofa and a bed that looked nothing like the standard hospital fare. As expected of a gang boss, getting admitted to a VIP suite like this. The woman sitting beside Mr. Sanders glanced at me, then gently shook his arm and whispered something to him. Mr. Sanders opened his eyes and looked at me. "Ah, it's you. You're the one who saved me, aren't you?" The face was undoubtedly the same man I helped this morning. "Yes, that's correct. Thank you. I owe you my life. I'm glad I could help, but how did you know I worked at that company?" "Oh, I asked the police who saved me." From there, I looked up the company, and it was easy to figure out. I see. That's impressive. By the way, are you heading somewhere with that box of yours? I glanced at the box and forced a smile. No, I was just fired. What? Fired? What happened? Or do you not want to talk about it? No, it's fine. Actually, there was a big client meeting today, but I was 2 hours late. By the time I called the client, they were already furious. My boss, who got an earful from them, lost his temper and decided to fire me, saying he never wanted to see my face again. So, in a way, this is my fault? No, it's just how things turned out. It was probably inevitable. What do you mean? It's not anyone's fault, it was just bad timing. Who was the client? I can speak to them and get you back in the meeting. Maybe they'll reconsider, and your boss can reverse the firing. No, that won't be necessary. The company was already a toxic place, and this situation made me realize I don't want to work under that boss anymore. It's actually a relief. But won't being fired cause problems for you? It would be a lie to say it doesn't, but I can't stay in a place where the boss doesn't value human life. That company will probably go under eventually. This just sped things up. Human life? Oh, don't worry about it. I recalled how my boss berated me for prioritizing saving a life over a business deal. However, telling Mr. Sanders about it wouldn't sit well, as it involved both him and the situation with my former boss. Thinking that, I decided to leave the details vague. It's fine. I wanted to quit anyway, so this worked out for the best. Well, I see, so, what's next for you? I'll take it easy for a bit and then look for another job. I've always been in sales, so I'll probably continue in that field. Sales, huh? Well, no matter what, you saved my life. If you ever need anything, let me know, and I'll do whatever I can to help. Mr. Sanders handed me his business card. But no matter how grateful he was, I wasn't about to start associating with the gang. I tucked the card deep into my wallet and decided to push this experience to the back of my mind. However, about a month later, something unexpected happened. I received a call from Travis, whom I had almost forgotten about. "This is Travis, the underboss of the Sanders gang." Hearing Sanders gang immediately brought back memories of that day. "Oh, the gang's underboss. What could this be about?" Travis spoke to me over the phone in a friendly manner. His voice was gentle and gave me no reason to feel suspicious or uneasy. "Thanks to you, Mr. Sanders has recovered quite well. We'd like to thank you. How about grabbing a drink on us?" Still jobless and with plenty of free time, I figured it wouldn't hurt and agreed to meet him. The meeting spot turned out to be a casual bar. Given my image of underbosses frequenting fancy establishments, I was surprised but also relieved by the choice. The lively atmosphere and small private room felt welcoming, and after ordering some familiar dishes from the menu, we exchanged greetings once more. "Sorry for inviting you to a place like this when it's supposed to be a gesture of thanks." Travis laughed as he spoke, his face looking incredibly calm. "Not at all. I actually feel more comfortable in a place like this. Honestly, I feel the same. I might seem like I'd prefer nice restaurants, but I relax more in places like this." "Same here. Fancy places are way too intimidating for me." We shared a laugh, and once the mood was easygoing, Travis broached the topic. "So, have you found a new job yet?" "Ah, not at all. I'm still looking." "So, still nothing?" "Yes." "So, what kind of work are you looking for?" "Rather than something new, I'll likely stay in the same industry since I've been in sales for so long. But it seems Mr. Andrews has been spreading rumors about me, and other companies aren't exactly welcoming me during interviews." "That's terrible." "It really is. I suppose I could try a different industry, but somehow I feel stuck." "It's foolish, isn't it?" "No, it just shows how much pride you've taken in your work, doesn't it?" "Well, I suppose so." "I see. In that case, why not start your own business?" "What?" "Forgive me, but I did some research on you. From what I found, you're a dedicated worker who always considers others. It seems like many of your former colleagues respected you." "Did they really?" "Exactly. That's why I'm suggesting you start your own company. I appreciate the idea, but the problem is funding. Starting a business is one thing, but I'd need enough capital and people to make it work. And I simply don't have that kind of money." "Funding, huh? But with your expertise, you could make it happen, couldn't you?" "Of course. I have the experience and connections, and I'd love to do it." "Then, if funding wasn't an issue, would you go for it?" "Yes, if I had the capital, I'd definitely give it a shot." "I see. The Sanders gang will fund it for you." "What? How about starting with $500,000? If you need more, just say the word." "That's unbelievable. Consider it an investment." Mr. Sanders insisted on it, saying, "He saved my life, so now it's our turn to help him." For something like this, no expense is too great. But this is a risky endeavor, there's no guarantee of success. Listen, you're going to succeed. And you know as well as anyone that if you approach this with doubt, you're bound to fail. Go into it with confidence, and you'll make it work. He was right. I had learned through countless deals that fear of failure often leads to failure itself. Whenever I pursued a deal, I focused solely on success and never let doubt cloud my efforts. That's why I'm investing in you. I know you'll succeed." Travis pulled out a checkbook and wrote $500,000 on a check. "Now you have no choice but to start your own company. Best of luck." "Thank you so much." I shook Travis's hand firmly, ordered another beer, and raised a toast to the future. The next day, I began preparations to start my own business. The first priority was hiring staff, but bringing in people unfamiliar with the work wouldn't help. So, I reached out to former colleagues from my old company, people I trusted. At first, they laughed and said it was an unrealistic idea, but when I explained how serious I was and that I had the funding, they became enthusiastic and agreed to join me, offering their support as my right-hand partners. From there, things moved quickly. We secured an office and visited former clients to re-establish connections. When they heard about my new venture, many were happy to offer their support. The business grew steadily. What started with just 2 people expanded to include office staff and more salespeople, all of whom were former colleagues. A year later, the company was thriving, generating significant profits. One day, I received a call from Mr. Sanders. He said he had something to discuss and asked me to visit his home. Curious about what it could be, I went to his residence. What he said there took me completely by surprise. "Your company seems to be doing quite well." "Yes, thanks to you, it's going great." "Good. Then how about going after that $30 million deal you missed?" "What? The $30 million deal?" It was with Miller Trading, wasn't it?" "Yes, that's correct." "You're well informed." "I don't miss a thing. At Miller Trading, the department head happens to be a friend of mine, and when I told him what happened, he was shocked, saying he couldn't believe you were fired for saving my life, and that if you're the kind of man who can prioritize saving a life over a major deal, you're someone he can trust, so he wants to give you another chance to start from scratch, though, of course. Just because I put in a good word doesn't mean it'll be easy. This is where your skills come into play, so how about it? No pressure." "But do you want to give it a shot?" I'm thrilled. If I can secure a deal like that, my company will soar to the top of the industry." "Great. Then go for it. I trust your abilities." "Thank you so much." And so, I took on the challenge with Miller Trading, and the deal was a resounding success. Thanks to that, my company grew rapidly, with profits steadily rising. This growth is amazing, but we're short on staff. If this continues, my employees will be overwhelmed, I thought. I decided to reach out to former colleagues from my old company again. As news of my company's success spread, more and more of them expressed interest in joining, and many made the move. This led to a staff shortage at my previous company. When Mr. Andrews learned of this, he was furious. "What's going on? Why are my employees jumping ship to a startup? They owe their livelihoods to me." He called me in a rage. "Hey, James. What's the meaning of stealing my employees?" "I didn't steal anyone. We're short-staffed, so I simply reached out. It was their choice to join us. People don't just leave because you asked." "Are you offering them higher salaries?" "Partly, yes. Your pay was too low, and I offer fair compensation." "So they're all leaving because of that?" "That's part of it, but not the whole story." "What else, then?" "They probably couldn't tolerate working under a boss like you, cold and unfeeling." "What? If you want them back, go ahead and ask. It's up to them where they want to work. Don't get cocky. One day, they'll all abandon you and come running back to me." "Don't cry when that happens." Despite his threats, no one returned to his company. Even when he offered higher salaries, the employees refused. In the end, Mr. Andrews gave up and tried to make do by hiring inexperienced newcomers. "New hires cost less, so this is actually better for the company," he claimed. But with no experienced staff to guide them, the company's operations faltered. Reports of Mr. Andrews yelling at his inexperienced staff became commonplace. "Why can't you even do that? I know you're new, but this is ridiculous." However, without experienced mentors to guide them, it was inevitable that the new hires would struggle. Eventually, the company's reputation worsened, with rumors spreading in the industry that doing business with them was expensive and ineffective. As a result, the company's credibility plummeted. Finally, the outcome Mr. Andrews feared the most, bankruptcy, came to pass. What's worse, he fled without paying his employees, leaving the company in ruins with no chance of recovery. Meanwhile, I brought in his former employees as new hires at my company, instructing senior staff to train them and focusing on developing skilled workers through proper mentorship. While considering hiring even more employees, one day, a man knocked on the company gate. Well, if it isn't Mr. Andrews. "Oh, that's right, your company went bankrupt, didn't it? Which means you're no longer a CEO, are you?" It was the same Mr. Andrews who once valued his company above all else. "What brings you to my company? I heard your company is hiring." "Yes, that's right. Here, we ensure proper training for new hires and aim to develop them into exceptional employees. Would you consider hiring me?" "What? You fired me, and now you're asking me for a job? That's quite a request. Our ways of thinking couldn't be more different. Please, don't say that. I've lost everything and have nowhere else to go. I'm desperate. If you join my company, the first thing you'll have to do is pay the wages of the employees you left unpaid. Are you prepared for that? Why should I have to do that? That's all in the past. No, your atonement isn't over yet. If you're serious about working here, that's where you start. That's impossible." Mr. Andrews sank to his knees and burst into tears. After that, he disappeared from the industry entirely, and no one knew where he went. Hearing about this, Mr. Sanders, with a drink in hand, asked me, "Hey, James. Why didn't you hire that Andrews guy?" "Andrews? You mean the former CEO? Yeah. If you had hired him and put him under you, you could have made him suffer as much as you wanted. After everything he did to you? Wouldn't that have been fair? If I did that, I'd be no different from him. I don't care what happens to him, but I won't stoop to his level or take pleasure in his suffering." That sounds like some idealistic nonsense. Maybe it is. But it's my ideals that have brought me this far, and it's because of them that you believed in me, isn't it? "Ha, this guy knows how to talk," Mr. Sanders chuckled. "I'm sorry, but dragging someone down only leads to your own downfall. I'd rather help people than destroy them. Besides, I don't need to do anything, he's already headed for his own hell." "Yeah, I guess you're right about that." With that, Mr. Sanders let out a hearty laugh, clearly amused and impressed. My name is Keith Arnold. I'm the head of the Arnold Gang, one of the most prominent gangs in the Kanto region. Back in my youth, I used to make quite a name for myself, but now that I've reached 65, I think I've mellowed out a bit. I lost my wife early on, and now I live alone. Sometimes I feel lonely, but I've learned to enjoy life in my own way. Even I, someone like this, was once a kid. Today is a reunion of my high school. Quite a few classmates have passed away, so it's expected to be a bit of a somber gathering. To brighten things up, the event encourages everyone to bring a partner. Naturally, I'll be attending alone, but most others will have someone with them. It's lively in its own way. Each person takes their seat, nibbling on the dishes laid out in front of them and pouring beer for one another from the bottles on the tables. Then, I felt a gaze directed at me. When I looked in the direction of the stair, I saw a surprisingly beautiful woman for her age. Is she a classmate? No, there couldn't have been someone that stunning back then. As I pondered, she smiled at me and nodded slightly. I returned the nod, but I still couldn't recall who she was. A little later, she approached me, accompanied by a familiar-looking man. It was Lucas. Lucas was the kind of guy who was always trying to act tough since we were kids. Of course, he was part of a delinquent group and even joined a motorcycle gang. But no matter how long he stayed in those groups, he never became an executive, let alone a leader. I was stunned to see that Lucas, of all people, had a beauty like her by his side. "Hey, Keith," Lucas called out in a friendly tone. "Hey, Lucas. It's been a while. What, no partner with you?" "Yeah, my wife passed away a long time ago." "I see, that's tough." "Yeah, it gets lonely sometimes, but it can't be helped." "Well, I managed to marry someone as beautiful as this lady." "Even in a place like this, there's no one as gorgeous as her, right?" "That's true, she is quite stunning." Catherine is my pride and joy," Lucas said with a delighted grin. Then, Catherine playfully poked him in the side. "Oh, right. She wants me to introduce you." "Oh? Me? Come to think of it, we did lock eyes earlier, didn't we?" "Yes, when I heard your name was Keith, I wondered if you might be the head of the Arnold gang." "Well, yes, that's me." "I thought so. I'm the daughter of the head of the Turner gang." "Thank you for always looking out for us." "Ah, the Turner gang? I appreciate everything on your end as well." In reality, the Turner gang isn't all that big. However, the Turner gang's leader and I have a good understanding, and my successor seems to get along well with him too. "My father often talks about you, Keith. He says you're incredibly strong, well-mannered, and an honorable man." "That's a bit too much praise." As Lucas's wife sang my praises, I felt a bit flustered and thought this was rather troublesome. Meanwhile, Lucas looked noticeably unhappy. "What's this? So you became the head of the Arnold gang, huh? But in the end, you've retired, right?" "Well, yeah." "Retired, huh? Does that mean you've quit the gang life too?" "Yeah, at 65, I can't exactly keep doing this forever." "What about you, Lucas? Are you still in the game?" "Of course. There's no retirement age for a gang." "Well, you're not wrong about that." "So, are you set to inherit the leadership of the Turner gang?" "Well, that's probably true. But no, that's not the case." To my surprise, Catherine flatly denied it. Normally, one would assume that a son-in-law would naturally inherit the position, but she outright dismissed the idea. "Hey, what the hell?" Lucas blurted out. "Excuse me," she said. "The Turner gang has a capable underboss, and he will surely take over the leadership." "Oh, I see," I replied. "Excuse me for a moment." "Honey, I'll just step out to the restroom," she said. Sure." Lucas responded, a little flustered. It seemed like she thought she might have said something she shouldn't have and headed off to the restroom. That left just Lucas and me, but we didn't have much to talk about. After all, I hardly had any real connection with Lucas. No shared memories, no common topics to reminisce about. So, I steered the conversation toward Catherine. She really is a beautiful woman. Full of life too. "Do you two plan on traveling together in the future?" "Nah, I'm still active in the game. I don't have time for that. Unlike you, who's living an easy life." "Well, I wouldn't say it's all that easy, but I do have plenty of free time." "Must be nice to live like that," he said, once again with a displeased look on his face. "Hey, you're not thinking of messing with Catherine, are you?" Out of nowhere, he came out with this outrageous accusation. I looked at Lucas's face and realized he wasn't joking. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I'm serious. Earlier, you were exchanging looks with her, weren't you?" "We just happened to make eye contact, that's all. She's a beauty, I get why you'd want to look, but remember, she's my wife." "Yeah, I get it. For someone who gets it, you sure seemed to enjoy chatting with her earlier." "It was just small talk. She's the daughter of Turner gang's leader, so of course, she greeted me properly." "Or maybe you had ulterior motives for talking to her? Are you serious right now? Do you even hear yourself? Aren't you tired of coming up with this nonsense?" I'm not tired at all. Listen, she's way out of your league. I never said I wanted her. A woman like her would never end up with someone as low-ranking as you. Didn't you hear me earlier? I told you I'm the head of the Arnold gang. What part of that screams low-ranking to you? Shut up. I've hated you since we were kids. And now you're a boss? Give me a break. How can I accept that? I'm still active. But you're living the high life. How does that even make sense? That's not for me to answer. I've worked hard to get where I am. Worked hard? You were just lucky to be the son of the previous leader of the Arnold gang. That's why you became the boss, isn't it? Meanwhile, no matter how hard I work, I can't even make it to the executive level. Wait, are you telling me you're still not an executive at your age? You're still just a grunt? Shut up. I don't need to hear that from you, you lowly grunt. Lowly grunt? You must be joking. Don't try to drag me down just because you're stuck at the bottom. I never wanted to be an executive anyway. You seemed pretty bitter about it just now. You're contradicting yourself. Are you all right? Shut up. My wife is the daughter of Turner Gang's leader. That makes me way better than someone like you. The more you talk, the more pathetic you sound. Face it, at your age, you're not climbing any higher. Why not settle for mentoring the younger guys? It'd make your life easier. Shut up. I don't need advice from you. Fine, suit yourself. I was just trying to help. Honestly, your wife must be an incredible woman to stick with someone like you. She's a gem. That's right. She's my pride and joy. You'd never land someone like her, so don't even dream about it. Sure, I'm envious. But honestly, I feel sorry for her being stuck with you. She could have married someone far better. Even Mr. Turner must feel frustrated seeing her with you. What do you mean frustrated? She's with me because she wants to be. No one else deserves her but me. What a lot of confidence you've got. Where does it even come from? I'm not interested in becoming some kind of leader or anything. I'm all about staying on the front lines my whole life. That's the kind of life I live, and that's exactly what she's fallen for. It was obvious he envied me, yet his pride wouldn't let him admit it. Is that so? Well, your logic is all over the place, but if that's what works for you, who am I to judge? I don't really care how others choose to live their lives. Of course, you don't. After all, you're spending your twilight years alone, aren't you? What a pitiful old man you are. Yeah, you're not wrong. Not having a wife does get lonely sometimes. If you're that lonely, why don't you get remarried? Not that you'd ever find someone as good as my wife, no matter how hard you try. It seemed Lucas' entire sense of self-worth was wrapped up in his wife. Without her, he probably wouldn't have anything to brag about. I worked hard to win her over, you know. No ordinary guy could ever dream of getting a woman like her. Is that so? By now, I had lost interest in the conversation entirely. I wanted to leave this nonsense behind. And to make matters worse, Lucas wouldn't let anyone else approach me. Whenever a classmate tried to talk to me, he glared at them until they backed off. I couldn't understand why he was so fixated on me. I wish he'd hurry up and come back, I thought. It's pathetic that he can't even talk to anyone else without her around. No wonder everyone avoids him with those glares. Hey! I'm talking to you, and you're not even listening. Huh? Were you saying something? Sorry, I was thinking about something else. What? Thinking about my wife, weren't you? What? That's it, isn't it? You were thinking about my wife. You bastard. I wasn't thinking about her at all. I was lost in my own thoughts. Yeah, right. You've got nothing else to think about, do you? You're not even working anymore. Come on. Even I have things to think about. Don't be so quick to dismiss me. Yeah, sure. The only thing you've ever thought about is women. Back in the day, you always stole the girls I was seeing. Did that really happen? Of course, it did. You're that kind of guy. I tilted my head in confusion. We hardly interacted when we were kids, so I had no idea who he had been dating back then. And yet, he claimed I stole someone from him. Although, thinking back, there was a time I ended up dating a girl who turned out to have been involved with Lucas. But that wouldn't count as stealing, would it? Look, I can't speak to stuff from when we were kids. I never intentionally took any girl from you. If I dated someone who turned out to have been with you, I didn't know at the time. That's all there is to it. So you admit you took her from me, he shouted. How do you figure that? Are you sure you're not losing it? Maybe a bit of dementia? Or is it just your imagination running wild? It's neither. You're just mocking me. I'm not mocking you. I'm worried about you. We're both 65 now. You think you're fine. But sometimes things start breaking down without you realizing it. I'm still active. Nothing's breaking down on me. Fine, have it your way. There's no reasoning with you. Just go back to your table. What did you say? You're trying to send me back so you can hit on my wife, aren't you? Don't be ridiculous. Give it a rest, will you? Who are you calling ridiculous? You bastard. I won't forgive this. With that, Lucas threw a punch at my face. Caught off guard, I couldn't dodge, and the blow knocked me down. Before I could recover, Lucas straddled me and started raining punches on my face. Never in my life did I think I'd be pinned down and beaten like this at my age. The classmates around us screamed in shock and panic. This reunion was completely ruined. Stop it, Lucas. Shut up. You're the one I can never forgive. As Lucas struck me again, Catherine returned, letting out a horrified scream. What are you doing? Stop it. Desperately shouting for him to stop, she pulled at Lucas's clothes to get him off me. By the time he finally got off, I had a nosebleed. I grabbed a napkin from the table and wiped it away. Catherine, clearly panicked, quickly called a staff member to bring a towel and handed it to me. But the bleeding wouldn't stop. She trembled, tears streaming down her face, as she apologized profusely. I'm so sorry. My husband has done something truly terrible. Please forgive us. Why are you apologizing? I'm not the one at fault here. And besides, I'm your husband. So why the hell are you crying over him getting a nosebleed? I'm really sorry. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. It's just been a while since I've been hit like that, so I was a bit surprised. You need to apologize too. I don't need to apologize for anything. Why the hell are you apologizing so much to him? It's ridiculous. Don't tell me you're falling for this guy? Are you insane? Do you even realize who you're talking about? He's the head of the Arnold gang. Do you understand what kind of trouble you've caused? I don't care about that. Arnold gang or not, he's just a classmate to me. I've got no reason to be scared of him. Think about the position you're in. I'm so sorry. Are you hurt anywhere else? You really took a beating. Should I call an ambulance? Ma'am, you're exaggerating. I'm really fine. But... Enough, Catherine. He said he's fine, so just leave it alone. I can't just leave it alone. Why the hell not? I'm your husband, and I'm telling you to drop it. You don't need to worry about someone like him. Clearly agitated, Lucas was yelling, trying to drag Catherine away from me. However, she completely ignored him. Instead, she helped me up and tried to seat me in a chair, taking care of me attentively. Seeing this, Lucas grew even more furious. "Knock it off already. I'm your husband. Get over here." With that, Lucas grabbed her arm and pulled her toward him. That's when it happened. Catherine slapped him across the cheek. "You're the one who needs to knock it off. Do you even realize what you've done? Ouch. Why are you so angry? Why wouldn't I be? You lash out and hit anyone for no reason. When are you going to outgrow this stupid fighting habit? You're an embarrassment at your age. No wonder you've never been promoted to an executive position. What did you say?" I don't care about becoming an executive. I've decided to stay active for life. Not even you can criticize the way I live. Staying active for life sounds cool, but it's just because no one will promote you. After the way you act, it's no surprise you're not an executive. What? I've had enough. I can't stay married to someone as foolish as you. I want a divorce. What? Why are you talking about divorce? I've told you before. You're too stupid to stay with. Starting a fight at a reunion? That's unheard of. Don't you care about how much trouble you've caused for everyone else? That's none of my business. That's exactly why I'm divorcing you. Marrying you was a mistake. What the hell are you saying, you bitch? Lucas, overcome with rage, raised his hand to strike Catherine. She shrank back, unable to move, tightly closing her eyes. I stepped in to protect her, placing myself between them and grabbing Lucas' descending arm. Ouch! What the hell are you doing? That's my line. Raising your hand against a woman? You're a disgrace to the gang. Thank you. Ha, I knew it. You're into my wife, aren't you? I can't take it anymore. I've put up with everything you've done until now, but I'm done. What? The reason you wanted to marry me, did you think I didn't know? You thought that by marrying the boss's daughter, you'd become an executive. Maybe even the underboss, and eventually take his seat, but my father doesn't make just anyone an executive. Not even his son-in-law. He makes decisions based on what's best for the group, yet because you've never been promoted, you blame everyone else. And on top of that, you act out like this, causing trouble everywhere, which is exactly why my father doesn't acknowledge you. And do you think I haven't thought about divorce before, knowing about your women but staying quiet because that's part of a gang's life? Enduring it all, yet you don't even understand the hardship I've endured, and now you go and do something as stupid as this? Ugh, shut up. What do you mean, stupid? Hitting Arnold Gang's leader? That's nothing but pure stupidity. If Mr. Arnold gets angry, he could crush our gang in an instant. Don't you even realize that? No matter how close you are as old classmates, this is way out of line. It's proof you're not thinking about our gang at all. Shut up, shut up. Stop screeching like that. You're the one making all the noise. Who cares if he's the head of the Arnold gang? Sure, to you, he's some big deal, but to me, he's just a classmate. Are you seriously 65 years old and still don't get how the world works? Don't you dare talk back to me. I said this is fine, and that's that. She glared at Lucas with eyes full of anger. Lucas, though just as angry, seemed to shrink under the intensity of her fury. Still, if left alone, there was no guarantee Lucas wouldn't lash out again. That would ruin the reunion for everyone else. I pulled out my phone and called one of my executives, who was waiting outside the venue, instructing him to come in immediately. Moments later, the doors opened, and two men entered. Mr. Arnold, what can we do for you? Catherine, you said you're serious about divorcing him. If that's the case, I'll deal with this without holding back. Yes, I'm serious. I've had enough of him. All right, I understand. Take that man to the Turner gang. Yes, sir. The two men grabbed Lucas by the arms and began escorting him out of the venue. Of course, Lucas didn't go quietly. He shouted and struggled the entire way. Damn it! What are you doing? Let me go. Let me go, damn it. Do you even know who I am? I'm Lucas from the Turner gang. Oh, how embarrassing. Even shouting his name, no one knows who he is. Mr. Arnold, I truly apologize for what he's done. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But I'm so sorry to make such a bold request, but please, I beg you, don't destroy our gang. Ah, don't worry, I won't do that. If you're still concerned, why don't you come along? Staying here doesn't make much sense. Since you're not a classmate, and you likely wouldn't fit in with the conversations anyway. Besides, after all that, the others are probably feeling uncomfortable. Yes, I'll do that. Thank you. Catherine bowed deeply and said, I apologize for all the trouble I've caused. I'll be taking my leave now. With that polite farewell, she exited the venue. She's far too good for someone like Lucas. When we arrived at the Turner gang office, my men threw Lucas in front of the Turner gang leader. The leader, surprised by the sudden appearance of me, my executives, and Lucas, was even more shocked to see his daughter there as well. What on earth happened here? Father. Catherine approached the Turner gang leader. Catherine, what's going on? Wasn't today Lucas' class reunion? Yes, it was. But we met Mr. Arnold there. Which means Lucas and Mr. Renaud are old classmates. Yes, but Lucas hit Mr. Arnold. Hit him? Why on earth would he do that? I don't really know. I was in the restroom when it happened. I'm so sorry. Lucas, why would you hit him? Because he was making eyes at Catherine. Making eyes? Mr. Arnold? That's right. That's absurd. Mr. Arnold, is there any truth to this? Of course not. Maybe in my younger days, but at this age, I don't have the energy to be looking at another man's wife like that. You don't know that. Look at her, she's such a beautiful woman. There's no way any man could just sit back and not make a move. No, not even then. I can't imagine Mr. Arnold doing such a thing, regardless of age. It's just not in his nature. How can you be so sure? He's always been the kind of guy to steal my women. What? I think there's been a misunderstanding. Back when we were kids, I dated someone who turned out to have been Lucas' ex-girlfriend. Ah, I see. That kind of thing happens. Yeah, but no matter how much I explain, he just doesn't get it. Unbelievable. And in the end, he accused me of making eyes at her and then hit me. What a ridiculous thing. Lucas, you knew this man as Mr. Arnold, and you still did something like that? Mr. Arnold or not, that doesn't matter to me. He's just an old friend from when we were kids. A friend? That's right. What's with that smug look? Mr. Arnold, is that the kind of relationship you have with Lucas? Not at all. We didn't even interact as kids. I have no idea why he's so convinced we're close. See, Lucas? It's all in your head. That's not true. Regardless, hitting Mr. Arnold is unacceptable. It's not a big deal. Father, one more thing. I've decided to get a divorce. What? Really? Yes, I'm completely fed up. I've decided to end this marriage. I see. Well, Mr. Turner, I don't want a divorce. Why do I have to separate from her? We've been together for so many years, and now we're entering old age. I refuse to let Catherine go. But, Lucas, Catherine wants a divorce. I've also thought for a long time that you two aren't well matched. What do you mean? What do I mean? When she said she wanted to marry you, I was against it. But because she insisted, I allowed it. Still, as a son-in-law, you've never had the qualities of a leader. No matter how much I wanted to help, there was nothing I could do. Catherine, on the other hand, has more of a leader's demeanor. That's ridiculous. So I always wondered when you two would break up. At over 60, she finally made this decision, but it's better late than never. Now I can rest easy when my time comes. That's ridiculous. I won't separate from Catherine. I'll never let her go. I don't want to stay with a man who raises his hand against women. A real man would endure no matter what is said to him. And as a son-in-law, you should know your place and not start fights without thinking. How can I feel safe with you around? What? Is that what happened? Yes, when Mr. Arnold had a nosebleed, I was helping him, and Lucas told me it wasn't necessary and pulled my arm. When I declared I wanted a divorce, he tried to hit me. That's when Mr. Arnold stepped in and protected me. I see. Mr. Arnold, thank you so much. Don't mention it. I can't stand men who raise their hands against women. Women should be cherished. I see, in that case, this divorce is settled. With that, Mr. Turner pulled a divorce petition from his drawer. Here, sign this. What? Why do you already have this? Because I've been waiting for the day you and Catherine would separate. I thought having it ready might make it happen, and here we are. This can't be. Go ahead and sign. No matter how much you resist, it won't change anything. Damn it! Lucas, with a frustrated look, signed the petition and tossed the pen aside. Seeing this, Mr. Turner happily handed the document to Catherine. Catherine took the pen and signed her name. Now we're strangers. Finally, I feel relieved. You have a mistress anyway, so this shouldn't be a problem for you. Oomph. Now that the divorce is finalized, it's my turn to address things. With that, I sat down in a chair. Indeed. After what he's done, he won't get off scot-free. But, you're not thinking of destroying the gang, are you? Don't worry. I'm not considering that. Thank you. Catherine requested it, after all. But Lucas hasn't said a single word. No apology, no concern for the gang. He's selfish through and through. Yes, that's right. There's no way someone like him could ever become an executive. Exactly. I'd think the same. Shut up. I'll do things my way. Is that so? Then I'll do things my way too. What? You punched Arnold's face. You understand this won't come cheap, right? Shh. It's just a face, isn't it? What's the big deal? He may call himself a chairman, but he's just a retired old man. So what if I hit a retired geezer's face? Lucas. Well, I guess you just don't understand the gravity of it. If that's the case, I'll make you understand. There's still plenty you don't know at your age, and learning new things can be enlightening, don't you think? Ha! Don't mess with me. So, how do you intend to make amends? Make amends? Yeah, your life or your money? Which will it be? What? Life or money, it's all the same to me. Just pick one. Neither. Why should I put my life on the line just for punching your face? As for money, forget it. I should be charging you for dirtying my fist on your face. I see. You really are clueless. All right, make him feel some pain. Got it. At my signal, my men clenched their fists and punched Lucas square in the face. Blow after blow from the two men left Lucas's face red and swollen as he started begging for his life. Please, stop. I'm sorry. I'm old. If I get hit like this, my bones will break. Broken bones don't heal easily at my age. Please, have mercy. If you want mercy, then decide how you'll make amends, your life or your money. I'm not a patient man. Okay. I'll decide. Just stop. Alright, stop. Now, let's hear it. How will you settle this? Money. I'll pay with money. Good. How much? $10,000? $20,000? Lucas, you really crack me up. You think you can get away with hitting the chairman of Arnold Group for such a paltry sum? The scale is completely off. Scale. Yeah, the scale. $10,000 or $20,000 is for low-level guys like you. My face represents the gang. Paying that little wouldn't uphold the group's honor. $100,000? Still not enough. $200,000? $1 million. $1 million. A million? Yeah, $1 million. No way. What did you expect? You punched the chairman's face. Paying that much is only natural. But I don't have that kind of money. Catherine, help me. You could ask Mr. Turner, couldn't you? Did you forget? We're divorced now. I'm done cleaning up your messes. No way. So, what will it be? Are you paying or not? I can't pay. I don't have the money. Then borrow it. Isn't that what loan sharks specializing in gang are for? Should I call one for you? They'll come right away if I make a call. Fine. Please do. All right, I'll call them. Catherine said this with a smile, then immediately contacted Samuel from Blue Dragon Finance. After a short while, a black sedan pulled up in front of the office, and a polite-looking man in his 60s stepped out. Thank you for waiting. Hey, Samuel. Mr. Arnold and Mr. Turner. It's been a while. Oh my, even your daughter is here. What a rare gathering. Certainly rare. Anyway, Samuel, could you lend Lucas $1 million? Pass that money along to Mr. Arnold. Of course, sir. While I process the transfer, please have him sign the loan agreement and the life insurance application. Samuel, where are you planning to send me? Lucas asked nervously. Well, for $1 million, a crab fishing boat would be ideal. But considering your age, this guy loves throwing punches. He even hit me earlier, I added. Is that so? Then I have just the place for him, a survival game arena. A real-life survival game, huh? Sounds perfect for him. He can fight to his heart's content. Precisely. Everyone around him will be enemies, and there's no way to escape. Good luck. Survive for 10 years. And you can pay back the principal. And how many years would it take to pay off the interest? Lucas muttered. Who knows? Let's find out. Now that the paperwork is signed, let's proceed. Lucas was taken away, and given his age, there was no chance he'd make it back alive. What a fool, I thought, chuckling to myself. After everything that had happened, I considered how Catherine, despite being prepared for divorce, must feel after parting with a husband of decades. Thinking it must be painful for her, I decided to invite her for a meal. When I asked how she felt, her response surprised me. Do you think I feel sad seeing him taken away? Sad? Not at all. At his age, there's no way he'll survive the survival game, and honestly, I feel relieved. Otherwise, he'd have stalked me even after the divorce. So, you really have no regrets? None at all. I know I must seem like a cold woman, but this was inevitable. He never worked, was selfish, and had a terrible habit with women. You have no idea how much I've suffered. The only reason I didn't divorce him sooner was fear that he'd harass me afterward. You could have asked Mr. Turner for help. I could have, but since I married against his wishes, I couldn't bring myself to ask for help when things got tough." She laughed brightly as she spoke, her joy at being free from Lucas unmistakable. "Please, save my grandfather. I'm begging you." I had been working as a top-tier neurosurgeon abroad. But one day, my life took a turn, and I ended up in a situation where returning to my career as a doctor seemed impossible. For my recovery, I returned to my hometown after 10 years. There, I reunited with my beautiful childhood friend, but her grandfather suddenly collapsed. As she clung to me, crying and pleading for help, I held her shoulders gently and reassured her. "I'm not just going to save your grandfather. I'll save you too." "Save me? What do you mean by that?" I looked into her eyes and nodded firmly. 3 months later. My name is Kai Nelson, a 38-year-old neurosurgeon who is currently on hiatus for personal reasons. It had been 10 years since I left for a foreign country to pursue my career, and I hadn't returned to my hometown even once. I have visited the mainland US several times for medical conferences, but since my hometown is a remote island, I always flew straight back after the conferences. Who would have thought I'd come back to my hometown for this reason? I boarded a plane bound for Hawaii, gazing out at the endless ocean. Somewhere out there, people were living their daily lives, just as usual. As I thought about this, the silhouette of the island gradually grew closer. Since there was no high school on the island, and I wanted to become a doctor, I left for a boarding school on the mainland when I was 15. I used to return to the island once or twice a year, but I never felt particularly nostalgic for my hometown until now. Maybe I miss it because I'm getting older, or maybe it's because my body has weakened. As the plane started its descent and shook slightly, I couldn't help but reflect. After transferring to a smaller plane bound for my remote island, I finally set foot on my homeland. An elderly man with a cane approached me. "Are you Kai from the Nelson family?" "Oh. You're the guy from the fishing shop, right?" "That's right. Though I'm an old man now." "You've grown tall, but your face hasn't changed much." "I recognized you right away." "Really?" Feeling a little embarrassed, I scratched my head. "It's been ages since you came back, hasn't it?" "I heard you became a doctor abroad and were doing great." "Yes, that's true, but I've been unwell, so I'm here to recover." "Is that so?" "Being a doctor must be tough." "Take your time and rest up." "Thank you, I will." I parted ways with the old man and headed toward my family home, a 15-minute walk uphill from the port. Huff, huff. Looks like regaining my stamina won't be easy. I had to stop to catch my breath, wiping the sweat from my brow. I still had a slight paralysis on one side of my body as a lingering effect. When I finally reached the top of the hill and turned around, the breathtaking view left me speechless. Amazing, an endless view of the ocean in every direction. Though I had seen this view countless times before, it felt new and awe-inspiring. "Welcome home, Kai. It's been a while. The trip was long, wasn't it? How's your health?" My mother, who lived alone on the island, greeted me warmly. "I'm back. Yeah, I had surgery and rested a bit over there, so I'm fine for daily life. But maybe my immunity is low. So I feel like I'm catching a cold. 3 months ago, I collapsed from a subarachnoid hemorrhage. It happened so suddenly that I only contacted my mother after the surgery was over. When I called her via video chat, she was understandably worried and in tears. To calm her down, I promised to return to the island after my rehabilitation. There was no way I could tell her I might never return to being a doctor. I made sure to move carefully, so she wouldn't notice the lingering discomfort in my body. That day, after finishing surgery and meeting with a patient in my office, I suddenly lost track of where I was and what I was doing. I remember seeing the shocked face of the patient as I collapsed. That was the last thing I saw before losing consciousness. Dr. Nelson, are you okay? When I came to, awakened by a colleague's voice, I was already in the ICU. My surgery had been completed, but I was the patient this time. Even doctors can fall ill. Of course, that's to be expected, but I'm only 38. Luckily, I was able to undergo emergency surgery at the hospital where I worked, and my life was saved. Looking back, I did feel a headache that morning, but it wasn't bad enough to take the day off. If I had stayed home and collapsed there instead, who knows what might have happened. If you're feeling under the weather, you should visit the clinic. Get some medicine. Yeah, I'll do that. The island has a small clinic that serves as the lifeline for its 800 residents. I decided to visit the clinic the very day I arrived. Well, if it isn't Kai. The doctor in the clinic called out in surprise when I was shown into the examination room. Dr. Hastings. It's been a long time. This doctor, who had been around since my childhood, was once a young physician but now had a head full of white hair. It was through my interactions with him at this clinic as a child that I first became interested in becoming a doctor. You haven't been here all this time, have you? I asked as I took off my jacket. Not at all. This is my 4th stint here after working at hospitals on the mainland. Rural medicine is tough. But I hear you've made a name for yourself as a neurosurgeon overseas. What brings you back? Well, I've been unwell, so I'm taking a break from work and came back to recuperate. I shared my story with Dr. Hastings. I see. Doctors are human too, after all. As frustrating as it is, illness doesn't discriminate. As Dr. Hastings examined me with his stethoscope, a nurse appeared behind him. I glanced at her face and felt a sense of familiarity. Wait a second, are you Molly A? The nurse looked startled and turned to me. Kai? Is that you? Yeah, it's me. It's been a long time, hasn't it? What, 20 years? Molly a nurse at the clinic, had been my classmate from kindergarten through high school. Back then, she was an outstanding student, always competing with me for the top spot in our grade. Not only was she incredibly smart, but she was also stunningly beautiful, approachable, and kind, making her a magnet for attention. Unlike other boys, though, I never saw her as anything but a rival for academic dominance. Still, we were close as childhood friends while attending our small island middle school. But once we started attending separate high schools on the mainland, we stopped talking. At our high school, students' names and their chosen universities were posted in the hallway as they decided on their future. I don't recall ever seeing Molly A's name up there before we graduated. With her brilliance, she could have gone anywhere. I'd even heard through the grapevine that she wanted to become a doctor. But we never reconnected, and I left for college in California. I heard you were thriving as a doctor at a prestigious hospital overseas. What brings you here? Before I could answer Molly, Dr. Hastings interjected. You two can catch up all you want after the exam. Oh, sorry. Dr. Hastings, my apologies. Molly said with a small laugh, sticking her tongue out playfully. That little gesture caught me off guard and made my heart skip a beat. Even though Molly was now 38, she looked much younger. What's wrong with me? What am I even thinking? Even as I thought that, her gaze lingered on me throughout the exam, making me worry that the stethoscope might pick up the pounding of my chest. When are you off work? Want to grab a bite to eat somewhere? As I slipped my arms back into my jacket, I asked her. Kai, you really don't stop to consider whether or not I might have a family, do you? She chuckled softly. Oh, sorry. So, you're married? Of course, you are. Feeling embarrassed, I scratched my head. I was just thinking of it as an old classmates' reunion, no ulterior motives or anything. Molly smiled warmly and shook her head. No, I understand. I'm sorry for saying something weird. I'd love to have dinner with you, Kai, but I live alone with my grandfather. So I need to get back home. Why don't you come over instead? Sure, I'd be happy to. While I would have preferred to talk with her one-on-one, this arrangement would have to do. Still, something about this situation tugged at me. Malie's grandfather, who had been the village chief for years, was a prominent figure on the island. From my childhood memories, he was a stern, stubborn man. Back then, none of our classmates wanted to visit Malie's house because of him. Remembering this, I found myself feeling nervous as I arrived at her home. Standing before the imposing gate of her grand family estate, I hesitated for a moment. What's this feeling? Malie and I are just childhood friends. I'd never had this experience, but I imagined it felt similar to the nerves of asking for a family's blessing to marry someone. I followed Malie inside and into the living room, still feeling a bit uneasy. Malie, you're 5 minutes later than usual. Who's that man? A burly, stern-faced old man sat on a cushion, glaring at me. Grandpa, this is Kai, my childhood friend. You remember him, don't you? Her grandfather, Keone, furrowed his brows, thinking for a moment before speaking. Ah, yes, the son of that family who sold off all their ancestral land to make him a doctor. Such sacrilege. Grandpa. That's uncalled for. Malie protested on my behalf, but Keone just snorted and turned away. I'm going to bed. You can talk, but stay in the main room. No disappearing into another room alone. Yes, Grandpa. Good night. Without looking back, Keone retreated to his room, but I noticed his gait was unsteady, and his hands seemed to tremble. I'm sorry, Kai. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Is your grandfather unwell? He didn't seem quite himself. His body isn't as cooperative as it used to be. But he's 82 years old now, so it's probably just age catching up with him. I hope that's all it is. The Keone I remembered was always scowling and intimidating. Which is why no one ever wanted to visit Malie's house as kids. You must be hungry. I cooked before work this morning. It's mostly food my grandfather likes, though. If I'd known you were coming, I would have made something special. Malie blushed slightly as she laid out dinner on the table. They were chicken long rice, poke, luo leaves with kalua pork, and hapia for dessert, all of which were Hawaiian dishes. I've missed this kind of homemade Hawaiian meal. They look amazing. Really? I'm glad. Malie smiled and sat across from me. As we shared the meal, we caught up on each other's lives. Despite the years apart, we naturally bonded over childhood memories. But when the conversation shifted to adulthood, Malie's tone grew somber. I'm so envious of you, Kai. Working in a prestigious hospital abroad. You really achieved your dream. She smiled, but her expression carried a hint of sadness. You wanted to be a doctor too, didn't you? I always thought you'd be out there practicing somewhere. I explained how I'd graduated from medical school, completed a residency program to hone my skills, and eventually secured a position as a neurosurgeon in a foreign hospital. My work often took me around every region, where I conducted surgeries and provided training. I had left for overseas 10 years ago. With her talent and drive, Malie could have easily achieved her dreams as well. My grandfather wouldn't let me leave the island. Malie's voice dropped to a whisper. She began to explain her situation. Her family was ruled by Keone's strict principles. Even her parents never dared to oppose him. Keone believed that women belong in the home. He disapproved of her leaving to study medicine, insisting instead that she marry a man involved in local politics or administration and carry on the family legacy. Meanwhile, my family had sacrificed everything for my education. My father, an office worker, took out loans and even sold our ancestral land. As Keone had scornfully mentioned, my family managed to scrape together enough funds. Malie's family, in contrast, had wealth and would never have struggled to pay tuition. Malie had everything she needed to become a doctor, but Keone's opposition forced her to reluctantly give up on her dream. He said if I was so determined to work in healthcare, he'd allow me to be a nurse at the clinic as long as I stayed on the island. So I went to nursing school under that condition. I see. I looked at Malie, who sat with her head slightly bowed. Working as a nurse at the clinic is fulfilling. The islanders rely on me, and I enjoy what I do. But even getting this job was through my grandfather's connections. He's been setting me up with matchmaking meetings, but none have worked out. So I'm still single. Malie's father, who worked for a major corporation, was frequently transferred for work. Her mother, unable to get along with Keone, had left the family. I managed to achieve my dream and repay my parents, but a doctor who falls ill and can't work is just another person. I'm a neurosurgeon. But I suffered a brain illness at this young age and still have lingering discomfort. I'm terrified of not being able to return to the field. When I expressed my fears, Malie, who had been downcast moments before, smiled warmly, perhaps trying to cheer me up. How long are you staying here, Kai? About a month. That's great. There's a festival this month. I think it'll be a nice change of pace. Want to go together? I remembered the festival from my childhood. It had always been a highlight of the year. Sure, let's go together. I agreed, and after enjoying dinner, I left Malie's home feeling much lighter. On the day of the village festival, I met up with Malie near the main venue. Sorry to keep you waiting, Kai. I turned at the sound of her voice and saw her in a vibrant muumuu, which is traditional Hawaiian clothing. Do you think it's too childish? I just really like this color. It suits you perfectly. It really brings out the best in you. I found myself dazzled by her presence, but I played it cool, trying not to show my nervousness. The festival was alive with food stalls and games. Despite being almost 40, Malie and I ran around like kids, laughing and enjoying ourselves. But a single sentence from her snapped me back to reality. My grandfather will be giving a speech as the village chief. We should go watch. When we reached the stage, a crowd had already gathered. Keone stood at the microphone, clearing his throat. We watched as he began his speech. Good evening, everyone. As your village chief, I am honored to welcome you to this festival. Today's weather has blessed us. And on such an auspicious day. Keone started strong, but then his words faltered. Grandpa? Malie's voice trembled as she spoke, and in the next moment, Keone collapsed onto his knees and fell to the stage floor. Panic erupted around us. Voices shouted, call the clinic doctor, and get the medevac helicopter. Grandpa! Grandpa! Malie and I waded through the crowd toward Keone, who was lowered from the stage. Keone was unconscious and not moving a muscle. One of the participants brought a car around and we carried him in. We headed to the heliport to wait for a doctor's helicopter coming from the Hawaii Island General Hospital. When the medevac arrived, both Malie and I accompanied Keone to the hospital. After initial tests, we were called into the consultation room to hear the results. This is a problematic location for a tumor, I said, immediately recognizing the issue as I examined the CT scan. Dr. Morton, who examined the patient, also has a difficult look on his face. That is not unreasonable. It is because the tumor is located in a very delicate area near the center of the brain. It's located in a very delicate area near the brain center. If the tumor continues to grow, surgery will become even more complicated. Considering his advanced age, we also have to evaluate whether he can endure the procedure. Dr. Morton's hesitation was evident as he explained the situation. Keone was the village chief and a prominent figure in the community. It was clear that Dr. Morton was reluctant to take on such a high-risk surgery. "Please, I beg you, save my grandfather," Malie pleaded through tears. Just then, a nurse rushed into the room. "The patient has regained consciousness." In the ICU, Keone opened his eyes and noticed Malie. With a faint nod, he acknowledged her presence. Malie held Keone's hand tightly as tears streamed down her face, and I couldn't help but think. Despite having her dream crushed by her grandfather, Malie is such a kind and caring granddaughter. I gazed at Malie's profile. After a week in the hospital, Keone was discharged and returned home. Dr. Morton said we need to discuss as a family whether to proceed with surgery. "The medication is helping for now, but there's no telling when another episode might occur. At my age, I should probably retire as village chief as well." Keone sat slumped. He is indeed a scary and stubborn old man, but he is known for his political skills. A sea route between this remote island and the big island of Hawaii is scheduled to be launched next year to spread risk in the event of a disaster and to expand tourism sales channels. This is also the result of Keone's longtime efforts to reach out to influential people. "I'll perform the surgery." "What?" Both Malie and Keone stared at me in shock. "I'll do the surgery at my hospital. I promise I'll cure you." "You're saying you can perform this surgery yourself?" "Yes. I can do it." Keone fell silent, clearly deep in thought. "Give me some time to consider. I'll talk it over with Malie and make a decision." "Of course, take all the time you need." A week later, as my thoughts began to drift toward preparing for my return, I was called to Malie's house. Entering the living room, I was surprised to find Keone waiting in a formal aloha shirt, looking composed and respectful. Quite unlike the man who had scorned me earlier. As I sat across from him, he slowly began to speak. "First, Kai, I owe you an apology. The other day, I insulted your parents, who worked so hard to put you through medical school. I am truly sorry." Keone bowed deeply, and Malie, sitting beside him, followed suit. Taken aback, I quickly urged them to lift their heads. "Please, there's no need for that. I'm okay, really. I've been a stubborn fool. I crushed Malie's dream of becoming a doctor and forced her into countless unwanted matchmaking meetings. I made her life far more restrictive than it should have been. Looking back, I regret it deeply. But Malie still wishes for me to stay healthy and keep fighting, and I want to continue serving the village and the island. So, I ask you, Kai, would you take me to your hospital and perform the surgery to save me?" Without hesitation, I replied, "I will. But I have one request." "A request?" Keone looked puzzled. "Please, this time, give Malie the chance to pursue her dream." "Kai." Malie gasped, her eyes wide in surprise. "Anyone can become a doctor, no matter their age. If she doesn't try, she'll regret it for the rest of her life. I'll support her every step of the way." "Becoming a doctor now?" Malie exclaimed, visibly shaken. "It's impossible. I'm too old to start something like that." Keone, however, spoke firmly. "Malie, if you still want to try, then do it. I'll support you." "Grandpa." "It may feel like it's too late, but it's never too late to live freely. I'm truly fortunate to have a granddaughter like you." "I am a very lucky man." I watched warmly as they held each other's hands, tears glistening in their eyes. I returned to my hospital ahead of them to prepare for Keone's surgery and focused intently on my rehabilitation, determined to be in top form. My efforts paid off, and the lingering discomfort in my left side almost completely disappeared. 3 months later, Malie and Keone arrived at the hospital, ready for his surgery. "Kai, please, save my grandfather," Malie pleaded, clutching my arm just before I entered the operating room. "I'm not just going to save your grandfather, Malie. I'm going to save you too." "What? Me? Trust me. Just wait here with peace of mind," I said with a reassuring smile as I stepped into the operating room. Surgery on an 80-year-old is far riskier than it would be on a younger patient. Time was not on our side. The tumor was in a challenging location and had grown to the size of a golf ball. However, by minimizing the strain on his elderly body, I successfully completed the surgery. Dr. Nelson, congratulations! What an amazing comeback! Welcome back! My colleagues showered me with words of praise. Who would have thought I'd be back in the operating room so soon? A profound sense of accomplishment filled my heart. Malia and Keone stayed for about a month, but tomorrow they were set to return to the island. Strange. I feel a little lonely, I thought, realizing how much I'd grown used to their presence. During Keone's hospital stay, Malia had been staying in my apartment located on the hospital grounds. She often mentioned taking walks around the sprawling campus while I was tied up with work. Though we didn't spend much time together, just knowing Malia was nearby brought me a surprising sense of comfort. But once they returned to the island, I didn't know when I'd see her again. "Kai, you said you'd help me. What did you mean by that?" On their last evening, Malia asked me this directly. "If you still haven't given up on becoming a doctor, I'll come back to the US for you. I'll support you with everything, your studies, your life. And whatever it takes. You'd change your life for me? I can't let you do that. You've achieved your dream, overcome your illness, and made such an incredible comeback. You've already helped me, Malia." "I helped you? How?" Malia looked at me, her expression filled with curiosity. "After I got sick, I thought I might never perform surgery again, or if I could, it would take years. But seeing you, even while burdened by your own frustrations, care so deeply for your grandfather, with such strength and kindness, gave me the motivation to push through. That's what helped me. Now, I want to be there to support you in chasing your dream. Kai. Malia, you've done more than enough for everyone else. You don't have to keep pretending to be strong anymore." Her expression softened, a mixture of relief and acceptance. "I want your help. Please help me." I smiled warmly at her response. 2 months after Malia and Keone returned to the island, I received updates. Keone's recovery was going well, and he was determined to remain village chief until the new ferry route between the island and the big island of Hawaii was inaugurated. Malia and I stayed in constant contact. She had resolved to pursue her dream of becoming a doctor and had consulted Dr. Hastings at the clinic. He had enthusiastically supported her decision and promised to help however he could. I couldn't return to the island right away due to the many patients awaiting my surgeries. But I had begun preparing to leave my current hospital once my commitments were fulfilled. My plan was to transfer to a hospital on the Big Island to be closer to Malia. I was eagerly anticipating our reunion. When we met again, I planned to propose to her formally. For now, though, there were still patients depending on me. Doctors don't just save lives, but they save hearts too. And sometimes, they get saved in return. Just like I was. With that thought, I prepared myself and pushed open the door to the operating room.